A funeral dress with a skirt that's too revealing makes me angry. It seems like you're trying to attract men by wearing it. I'm tired of my husband's unfair thoughts. I want a divorce. I'm leaving this house. My name is Kate, and I'm 40 years old. I love chocolate a lot and often end up eating a whole family-sized bar by myself without realizing it. I used to fight with my sister over chocolate when we were younger. Looking back, I wasn't always a mature big sister, but I've seen adults who act even less mature than I did when I was 25. Back then, I had just married my husband Kevin, who worked at a bank. We met through a friend and got married after about 6 months of dating. Everyone thought I had a perfect life. But things changed after we got married. Every day, when Kevin came home from work, I would greet him and ask about dinner. If it wasn't ready, he'd get upset. So, I made sure to come home before him, cook dinner, and clean up. It was a bit annoying, but Kevin's good salary allowed us to live in a nice house and have a comfortable life. I thought it was normal to have little arguments in a marriage, so I didn't pay much attention to it. But Kevin's behavior kept getting worse. Despite being married, I still visited my parents often, especially to see my 14-year-old sister who was much younger than me. Since our parents worked a lot, I felt like I raised her most of the time. It wasn't because my parents ignored her, but because I loved her so much and wanted to take care of her. My sister was often sick and had to stay in the hospital. Sometimes the doctors would say she might not make it through the night. Thinking about losing her made me love her even more. That's why even after I got married, I continued to visit my sister when she was out of school. But my husband didn't like it. He would say things like, "Who is more important, me or your sister?" When a woman gets married, she should focus on her husband's family. My mother never acted like this. "You're not doing your duty as a wife." He'd go on like this for almost an hour. None of my friends were married at the time, so when I talked to a senior coworker about my husband, she said, "It's your responsibility. When you're married, you have to prioritize your husband." I thought that's how it was supposed to be. Looking back, I realized I was naive. But even then, I couldn't imagine not seeing my sister. My sister's health was getting worse, and she was in the hospital again, only allowed short visits in a sterile room. It's natural for a family to want to be together in times like these. Sometimes, I'd even take a day off from work to go see her, and I started going to the hospital even on days when my husband was off. But my husband strongly disagreed with this. One day, out of the blue, he invited his mother, my mother-in-law, over to our house. With her there, he confronted me. "What are you even thinking? I work hard to take care of our home, and you can't even do that properly. You're just hopeless. I've told you so many times not to wear skirts, yet you still do. It's inappropriate for a married woman to wear a skirt. What's the problem with me wearing the clothes I like? And this dress was chosen by my sister. I can't just give up on it." See, there you go again, always bringing up your sister Kate. You should be caring more about me. After all, who do you think supports you? Hey, I work too. You can't just claim you're the only one providing. This argument isn't getting us anywhere. Listen, I've already called your workplace and told them you're quitting. You should be thankful. From now on, your focus will be on taking care of the house. What are you talking about? You can't make decisions like this without asking me first. I'm not going to listen to you. Starting today, you're going to live with my mom. Maybe then you'll learn how to be a proper wife. I don't understand what's gotten into you. You're acting irrationally. Shut up. The angry husband smashed a glass on the floor and continued to throw things around in his rage. Seeing the broken glass made me truly scared of my husband for the first time. I regretted marrying him, wondering how I ended up with someone like him. Later, I tried to cancel my resignation with my company, but they told me not to cause any trouble. It turned out my husband had demanded my resignation in a way that was almost abusive, so I lost my job and had to stay at home as my husband wanted. When I told him I quit my job as he wished, he apologized with a smile, saying he might have gone too far. But after seeing his true nature, I couldn't trust his apology. The next day, my husband surprised me by bringing home a group of his coworkers. He proudly introduced me, saying, "I wanted to show off my lovely wife." And his colleagues joined in, praising my appearance. Then, out of the blue, he declared, "My wife is an amazing cook. You have to taste her food before you leave." I panicked, realizing we didn't have enough food for everyone. "It's fine, just make something simple." "I don't want you to stress out," he reassured me. "I can go shopping if we need more ingredients," one of his female coworkers offered. Your husband really cares about you. I'm jealous, he added. No. He's just good at putting on a show. If he really cared, he wouldn't have brought his coworkers home after a big fight yesterday. I thought bitterly to myself as I started cooking with my mother-in-law. After about 3 hours of eating and drinking, his coworkers finally left. Hi, you. What? I instinctively replied, feeling nervous about what might happen next, given his grumpy mood. I was anxious, afraid he might explode like the day before. Can't you be a bit happier? Seems like I'm not teaching my wife properly, he criticized. I couldn't understand what I did wrong, but I didn't dare to argue. I was too scared. I'm sorry, I mumbled, feeling defeated. Even a child can apologize, he scoffed. Mom, give her a score for today. He turned to his mother for backup. Well, she's not doing a good job supporting her husband, is she? I can't give her any score, his mother replied. Haha, see, even my mom agrees. She can't even give you a score. How funny is that? My husband laughed and lightly tapped me, and about the meal, I tasted a bit. But didn't Kevin find it unsatisfactory? He continued. That's right, Mom. Keep it coming. And what about her clothes? There were men among the colleagues, but she's showing too much skin. What do you think? As a woman, it's indecent to expose your collarbone. She should cover it with a scarf or turtleneck, he added. Whose fault is it that his colleagues suddenly invaded our house and I had to cook without even having time to change my clothes? I retorted. It's Kevin's, I concluded. I couldn't understand why I was constantly being criticized so harshly. She really is something, isn't she? Despite my efforts to teach her every day, she just doesn't seem to learn. Maybe she's just not very smart, my husband remarked. No doubt about it, his mother agreed. That day, I endured a lecture for nearly 2 hours. By the time I finally got a chance to take a bath and go to sleep, it was almost 4 a.m. I had to wake up soon to prepare my husband's lunchbox, so I decided to skip sleep altogether. Despite everything, my husband continued to try to teach me a lesson, especially when I kept visiting my younger sister. About a month and a half later, I received the heartbreaking news of my sister's passing. I wished it was a lie, I murmured, desperately hoping that my mother's announcement of my sister's passing was just a cruel joke. I had been warned countless times about my sister's critical condition, and I had even shared what I thought would be my last moments with her. I thought I was prepared, but my heart couldn't accept the reality. She was only 14 years old. I questioned whether my sister, who endured painful treatments and constant hospital stays, had truly found happiness in her life. As her older sister, I had been able to bring her joy. However, the last expression I saw on her face in the hospital was a smile. It seemed she hadn't suffered. You fought bravely and you did your best. Thank you for everything, I whispered through tears as I hugged my sister and bid her a final farewell. The funeral passed in a blur, and I realized I hadn't been home for several days. I informed my husband about my sister's passing, but as expected, he didn't bother to attend the funeral. Instead, he said something hurtful like, "You should prioritize me over the dead." Unable to bear such cruel words at such a time of grief, I ignored him and hung up the phone. When I finally returned home, weighed down by sorrow, my husband and mother-in-law were waiting for me at the door, looking stern and unwelcoming. You're quite late, aren't you? My husband remarked. A family member has passed away. I couldn't just come back in a few hours. How can you accuse me of lying so easily? I replied, feeling hurt and frustrated. What? Are you going through a rebellious phase? Always lying and defying me. Whose wife do you think you are? He retorted. Wait a minute, my sister really did die. It's not a lie, I insisted. I wonder. Even though you haven't greeted me at the door in days, even if you're wearing a skirted suit now, it's hard to believe you, he replied dismissively. Why is it hard to believe? I asked, confused and upset. If you truly love your husband, you should be able to do it. It's your duty as a wife to welcome your husband home. My husband scolded me, accusing me of being incompetent, and don't even think about denying it. Are you having an affair? What? No matter how many times I tell you, he dressed provocatively, and the other day you were flirting with my colleague. You're just interested in other men, aren't you? What a disgraceful woman, he continued, hurling hurtful accusations at me. What the heck? I started to argue back, fueled by anger and forgetting my fear of my husband. But then it happened. Divorce, huh? Fine by me, Someone as frivolous as Kate isn't fit for Kevin, right? My mother-in-law chimed in. My husband mumbled, trying to stop her, but I seized the opportunity. I agree with Mom. Let's get a divorce, I declared firmly. My husband kept pleading with me to reconsider, but I had made up my mind. I couldn't risk staying with him any longer, afraid that his violence might escalate. This was my chance, and I was certain it was the right time to end our marriage. So I quickly packed my things and left the house. My husband kept insisting, if you apologize, I'll forgive you. But I ignored him, thinking he must be delusional. He persisted until the end, grabbing my arm tightly and saying, wait. But I reacted instinctively, hitting him in the face with my bag and running away. I headed straight for a specific place, a room in an apartment that I had prepared just in case something like this happened. As soon as I entered the room, I received a call from my mother-in-law on my cell phone. Hello. Kate, did you arrive safely? She asked concernedly. Yes, I'm fine. I'm in a taxi, so Kevin won't find out, I reassured her. That's good. Make sure to hire a lawyer and proceed with the divorce quickly, she advised. Yes, I can't wait to start living independently, I replied. In reality, my mother-in-law and I had been pretending to be at odds in front of my husband. It all began the day my husband brought a colleague home. After his lecture ended and my husband fell asleep, my mother-in-law approached me. Leave this house. Get away from my son, she urged me. Each time my husband criticized me, my mother-in-law, who seemed to have her suspicions, would ask, really? It turned out her late husband had been very much like my husband, and she had endured a lot in her own marriage. In her generation, divorce was frowned upon, so she couldn't end her own marriage. But it seems she wanted something better for me. Watching the interactions between my husband and me, she must have felt compelled to help me. That's when my mother-in-law, with the help of a friend, found a safe place for me to live alone. It's hard to believe she's related to my husband. I can't thank her enough for her kindness. After living in the apartment she arranged for me for 2 weeks, my mother-in-law finally visited, pulling along a suitcase. Welcome, I'm looking forward to this new chapter, she greeted me warmly. Living with us, my mother-in-law discovered that her own son had changed. Before, he seemed like a good person, the image he presented to his colleagues. My mother-in-law blamed herself, believing that his behavior was influenced by his father's genes or things he witnessed during his childhood. For me, regardless of the reasons behind his behavior, I believe the real issue lies in his inability as an adult to control his emotions. So, I don't hold my mother-in-law responsible. My husband now takes good care of my mother-in-law, but only because he thinks she's on his side. I fear what he might do if he discovers she's been helping me with the divorce. That's why I suggested she come live with me for a while when she prepared this house. At first, she hesitated, worrying that once my husband and I divorce, she'd become a stranger to me, but I assured her, saying, after everything you've done for me, there's no daughter-in-law distinction. You're like my mother or my sister. That's how I see you. On the way back from my sister's funeral, my mother-in-law steered the conversation toward divorce, intentionally supporting me. Recognizing her intentions, I quickly agreed to the divorce. I thought it would take more time and preparation to leave my husband, but thanks to my mother-in-law's help, that time came sooner than expected. I have nothing but gratitude for her. Finally, the divorce was officially settled through the lawyer. 4 days later, as I returned to the apartment, I was startled to find my ex-husband waiting for me outside. I found you. You're trying to trick me, he accused loudly. Does he know about what happened? I wondered silently, trying to remain composed. What do you want now? I asked, keeping my voice steady. It's your fault that the credit card and bank account balances have decreased, he blamed me. What are you talking about? I don't understand, I replied, feigning innocence. In truth, before the divorce, I was using my husband's credit card to gradually buy furniture for this house. I also quietly withdrew money from the bank account. It was all part of my plan, I confessed. When I discussed this with my mother-in-law, she encouraged me to go ahead with it, so I emptied the account without any hesitation. The reason why my unemployed mother-in-law and I can live comfortably, enjoying tea parties every night, is because of this money. That's my money. You can't just do whatever you want without facing the consequences, he shouted angrily. Remember the money we have? It's from the credit card we got after we got married and the money we saved together. Since we're married, it's both of ours, I explain, smiling at him. Suddenly, my mother-in-law returns from shopping and says, "Oh, you found out, didn't you?" Surprised, my ex-husband stands speechless behind me. "Hey, you're back," I greet my mother-in-law, trying to keep things normal. "What? Why is Mom here?" my husband asks, confused. "Well, because we're living together," I respond, with my husband still puzzled and my mother-in-law acting like it's no big deal. "So, you lied about going back to your parents' house, and why are you living with Kate, not me?" he questions. "I'm lost," Kevin admits. "Well, I've lost hope in you, Kevin," his mother replies. "What? But I'm the one who helped Kate get away," Kevin protests. "Actually, Kevin, Kate and I had already planned to split up before you even knew about it," his mother reveals. "But Mom, you were saying terrible things about Kate." "Yes, well, when I was criticizing her, I was really imagining you in her place," his mother confesses. "What do you mean?" Kevin asks, confused. "Because you're not the sharpest tool in the shed, and you get all worked up over silly things like a woman showing her collarbone. I was worried Kate would be in trouble. She deserved someone better than you for a husband," Kevin's mother bluntly tells him. Kevin is taken aback by his mother's harsh words. Meanwhile, I find her response so unexpectedly funny that I burst into laughter. "Mom, you do realize I'm your son, don't you?" Kevin asks, trying to make sense of it. "Unfortunately, yes. I guess I should have raised you differently," his mother responds dryly. I can't help it, and my laughter grows even louder. "You're just a chit off the old block, like your dad. Watching you mistreat Kate reminded me of my own past. I worried that if she left you, you'd come crawling back to me. I couldn't take that chance. So I left you and moved in with Kate, for both our sakes," Kevin's mother explains. Kevin's mother's confession brings tears to his eyes. He finally explodes, "Is it my fault? Why? You're my child. You've been neglecting me." His mother laughs, almost incredulously. "Do I still need to mother a grown man who's almost 30, she scoffs. A few neighbors gathered as our argument escalated in the yard. They chuckled at my ex-husband's dramatic outburst, saying, "He's really making a scene." With people watching, he didn't dare lay a hand on us and retreated to his house. But the next day, he seemed to have completely lost it. He started spreading rumors about us to his friends and co-workers who used to hang out at our place. "My ex may seem nice, but she ignores her husband," he complained to anyone who would listen. One woman at his office fired back, "You know, your behavior is exactly why women are wary of their husbands. It's becoming a societal problem." Although no one openly agreed, the vibe at work made it clear that Kevin was in the wrong, and he felt increasingly isolated. In the end, my ex-husband, who turned out to be quite sensitive, couldn't handle the judgmental stares and whispers anymore. He quickly quit his job. It's ironic how he was so quick to criticize me but couldn't handle criticism himself. How sad. Feeling alone, he sent me a lengthy letter trying to justify his behavior and boasting about his greatness as a man. The letter was a whopping 10 pages long. I was surprised when I received the thick envelope. I had blocked his texts, but if he could write this much by hand, I can only imagine how many texts he would have sent. His final line was, "If you ever miss me, feel free to contact me." So I playfully replied, "Then please go ahead with the property division." That sparked another big argument. I used to be afraid when we lived together, but not anymore. I stood my ground with my lawyer. Even before his mother suggested I leave, I had secretly been recording his behavior at home, preparing for a divorce. All those months enduring his hurtful words paid off. With the evidence, I successfully sorted out the property division. After that, I moved out from living with my ex-mother-in-law when I found a new job. It was still close enough for a reasonable commute. Surprisingly, she had found herself a boyfriend. It turned out the person who introduced us to the apartment was her new beau. She left with him, holding hands, and said, "Come visit us once we're settled." I must admit, my ex-mother-in-law really surprised me. She's a fantastic woman, and it's clear why she's so well liked, regardless of her age. As for me, I spent my best years focused on work after changing careers, thinking I might have missed my chance for remarriage. However, I started joining regular online gatherings with my colleagues. This gave me more opportunities to casually exchange contact info with people I didn't usually talk to, including a director from another department who showed interest in me. At first, I kept my distance because we worked for the same company. But as we began having private online chats about things we couldn't discuss at work, we grew closer and eventually started dating. The head of the department, who hadn't been in a relationship for years since his last girlfriend left him because of his workaholic tendencies, treated me with caution, saying, "I don't want to repeat the same mistake." And happily, we decided to tie the knot next year. I was concerned that his parents might not approve of me, considering I've been divorced before and he's getting married for the first time. However, I'm relieved to see his parents are accepting and even grateful, saying, "Thank you for being with our son." When I shared the news of my upcoming marriage with my ex-mother-in-law, she was genuinely happy for me. Oh, and about my ex-husband, it seems he found a job at a different bank and got remarried. But knowing his personality, it's likely he's been divorced again. That makes it 3 divorces now. He works at a bank and initially comes off as charming, but he tends to blame his ex-wives for the divorces, which makes it seem like women fall for him. Even when my ex-mother-in-law tries to warn women about his true nature at wedding receptions, he manages to manipulate them skillfully. Well, after 3 divorces, it's likely he'll start being avoided by women. I just hope there won't be any more victims. With the way he's going, he probably won't have a good ending because he's likely disliked by many women. But honestly, it's not my concern anymore.
I divorced my husband because he cheated on me 3 years ago with my younger sister. They sent me an invitation to their wedding. My mother said she would attend, and I felt betrayed by her too. Then she said, "I'll do something fun, you just wait and see." I had a plan to punish the 2 of them. My name is Emma. My husband and I worked in the same company, and I was his boss. He was a bit unreliable but sincere and friendly. I was responsible for training him and teaching him the job. At first, he was nervous about the new work, but over time, we grew close. "Yuma, are you free on our next day off?" he asked me. I was surprised when he asked me out on a date, but I was excited to see how confident he was outside of work. It made my heart skip a beat. After that, we often went out together. "Emma, will you be my girlfriend?" he asked. 6 months after we officially started dating, he could handle his work all by himself. He had become a valuable part of our company. I felt as happy as if it were my own success when other bosses praised him. He then got promoted and moved to a different department. That's when he proposed to me. "Emma, I want you to marry me." "Yes, I'd be happy to," I replied. My parents and younger sister Kate immediately liked Liam, and our wedding went smoothly. Kate, who was the same age as Liam, got along with him right away. "You're so lucky to marry a kind man like Liam. It seems like people at work have high expectations for him, right?" Kate said. She had just broken up with her boyfriend and was yearning for marriage, always telling me how jealous she was of me. After our wedding, I continued working and taking care of the household, supporting Liam both at work and in our personal lives. At least I thought I was supporting him. About a year after our marriage, he started coming home later and later, and we hardly ever had dinner together. "Hey Liam, we haven't talked about work lately. Is everything okay?" I asked. "Nothing's wrong," he replied tersely. "But you've been coming home late every day. If there's anything I can do to help." "There isn't," he cut me off. He used to share everything with me, but recently he seemed annoyed whenever I brought up work. On his days off, he'd either sleep all day, claiming exhaustion, or head out to clear his mind. Feeling like we weren't spending enough quality time together, I made a suggestion to Liam. "Hey Liam, how about we go to a spa together during the next holiday?" My sister recommended a place to us. I suggested. "A spa, huh?" A spa is a place where we can relax and recharge our bodies and minds, especially from the stresses of work. Seeing Liam busy, I took the initiative to make a hotel reservation that included a spa. A week before our planned spa trip, I asked Liam, "What time should we leave next week for the spa?" "Huh? Oh, is the spa trip next week? I forgot to mention I have a business trip scheduled for that weekend." "What? But you've known of the spa trip for a while now." "Well, it's work, so I can't really change it, can I?" "I see." Liam's department seemed busier than ever with frequent business trips. It seemed like I had no choice but to give up on the spa trip this time too. As usual, Liam left early in the morning for his business trip. If things had gone as planned, we would be on our way to the spa together by now, I thought sadly. While feeling down, I received a phone call. It was from the hotel where I had booked a reservation. Despite sending a cancellation email, They didn't receive it due to an error and called to confirm our arrival time. That's right, I thought. I might as well invite Kate. I called my parents' house, but Kate had been out since morning and wouldn't be back soon. So as a last resort, I decided to invite my mother to the spa. Compared to my sister, I had almost given up on the idea that my mother would be able to go on such short notice, but surprisingly, she agreed. Really? Is it okay to leave Dad alone? I asked. Right now, I'm more worried about you than your father, she replied gently. It seemed she had noticed I'd been feeling down lately and chose to join me on the trip. Thanks, Mom. I should be thanking you. I'm happy to be on a trip like this with you. I decided to make the most of the trip with my mother, which was a rare treat. However, as soon as we arrived at the hotel, my mother and I noticed something unusual. Mom, look at that. At the hotel, we spotted Liam, who was supposed to be away on his business trip. He was walking closely with another woman, both looking happy as they entered the same hotel where we were supposed to stay. As they walked in, the woman turned her face towards us for a brief moment. You've got to be kidding, I whispered in disbelief. The woman with Liam was my sister Kate. After that moment, shock took over and I have vague memories of how I made it back home. My mother made me some tea, which eventually helped me to start calming down. He had been lying to me, and not just Liam, Kate had deceived me too. After calming down, I called Liam's department. As I suspected, they hadn't been assigning business trips or much overtime for years. When I shared with my mother the days Liam came home late or was away on supposed business trips, it turned out Kate wasn't home on those days either, a detail that struck me. All those times he was late or away on trips, he was meeting Kate, wasn't he? I realized with a surge of anger rather than sadness. With the truth revealed, anger consumed me. Mom, I'm divorcing Liam. I don't want to see Kate, so I won't visit home for a while. She stayed silent but understood my decision. I made all the preparations just before Liam returned. I organized the divorce papers, arranged a new contract for my own house, packed my things, and moved into a temporary apartment before settling into the new place. At our home, I left a letter along with the divorce papers for Liam. I specified that all legal matters, including alimony, would be handled through my lawyer, and I blocked all forms of communication with him. To keep my new address private from Liam and Kate, I didn't inform my parents. Since we worked at the same company, we occasionally crossed paths, but I avoided any interaction with him completely. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Liam quickly agreed to the divorce. He didn't disclose the reason to anyone, but our colleagues seemed to gather it from my behavior and wisely avoided discussing the matter. 3 years went by with me keeping my distance from both Liam and my family. One evening after work, I found my mother waiting for me in my room. Mom, what's going on? I asked. I have something to show you, she replied, holding out an invitation. It's from Liam and Kate. To my surprise, Kate had left our family home and moved in with Liam. I had considered the possibility they might marry, but I never expected them to actually have a wedding and invite our parents. So, Mom, are you planning to go? I asked her. Of course I am, she answered firmly. I understood that I was the only one who still couldn't forgive them. It seemed they knew this, which was why they had only invited our parents to the wedding. Having distanced myself from Liam and my parents, I felt I had no right to object. Seeing my sadness, my mother smiled reassuringly and said, Don't worry. I'm not going because I forgive them. Just wait and see. On the day of the wedding, my mother video called me. I don't want to see their faces, I said, almost hanging up. But I remembered my mother's earlier words and stayed on the call. The screen displayed a slideshow that was being presented. The MC began introducing the slides. This slideshow was created by the bride's mother. She gathered photos from her beloved daughter's birth to the present and created this presentation, the MC announced. I was taken aback that my mother, who wasn't very tech-savvy, had put together such a slideshow. It stirred up a mix of emotions inside me. Mom, you went through all this effort for Kate. I wondered, feeling a wave of sadness. But then something caught my attention on the screen. Wait, this isn't Kate, I realized. The slideshow began with a photo of myself as a newborn baby. So cute, there's a resemblance to Kate somehow. The guests commented in a relaxed atmosphere as they watched the slideshow. Kate's expression grew tense. The MC continued, since she was young, the bride has always been dedicated to her family. She excelled as a student and successfully entered her desired university. Upon starting her career, she became a highly reliable employee at the company. Kate's friends and colleagues, who recognized moments from her student days and workplace, began to chatter excitedly. "Hey, isn't that a photo from the welcome party at University J? Kate didn't attend such a prestigious university, did she? Wait, isn't that a photo from the company's welcome party? Hold on closer inspection it looks completely different. Wait, if this isn't Kate." Liam also appeared to have noticed. "What the hell is this? This isn't Kate." Unaware of the bride and groom's shocked expressions, the MC continued to progress through the slides. And then she met the groom, Liam, at the company. According to the bride's mother, she initially trained Liam when he joined the company. Eventually, the two got married. Huh. Following this introduction were photos from my wedding with Liam. The MC couldn't hide their confusion, sensing something was amiss. They fell silent. It was then that my mother stepped forward and took the microphone. "Allow me to take over from here and explain," she said calmly as she advanced the slides. "Even after marriage, my daughter supported him both personally and professionally. However, as Liam became increasingly busy, he struggled to find time for her. So my daughter planned a spa trip to help him relax." "Wait, please." Kate cried desperately, her face pale, trying to halt my mother. Ignoring Kate's attempts, my mother continued with the slides. The next photo showed Liam and Kate entering the spa hotel together, looking very close. Finally, photos of the bride and groom appeared, and both the MC and the guests fell silent. Liam and Kate appeared even more pale. But Liam declined my daughter's spa trip invitation, citing a business trip he had to attend. He claimed it couldn't be helped due to work commitments. My daughter invited me instead, and it was during that trip that we discovered his affair. With those words, the room erupted into chatter and speculation prompted by my mother's revelation. Wait, an affair? And this wedding is for Kate and Liam. Could this wedding be based on their affair? But why would Kate's mother? To address the guests' inquiries, my mother continued in a measured tone. "Liam swore to marry my beloved daughter Emma and promised to make her happy. Instead, he betrayed her by having an affair with her own sister, Kate." "Mother, please stop. Today is supposed to be my wedding day. Can't you celebrate my happiness?" Kate cried, pleading with our mother to halt. Ignoring Kate's pleas, my mother stared coldly at her and replied, "I've always wanted you to be happy, but you were the one who shattered that first. Emma always considered not just herself, but the happiness of our family. What about you, Kate? Have you ever considered how much Emma would be hurt by your actions? Well, she always seemed so content. It's not fair. So instead of being happy for your family, you just got jealous, huh?" My mother-in-law retorted sharply. "Mother-in-law, please stop. She's your precious daughter too, isn't she? Can't you celebrate our new beginning? Why are you doing this?" Kate pleaded, clearly distressed. "I can't accept someone as dishonest as you into our family. Today's ceremony made that clear to me. If you truly wanted to start anew with Kate, why didn't you invite a single person from your own company? If you're going to have such a grand wedding, shouldn't you apologize to Emma? It's selfish to invite me and her father without making any effort like that." "But Emma has been ignoring me all this time," Liam protested. "Of course she has, after what you've done. It's only natural," my mother-in-law replied firmly. "But that's all in the past now, isn't it? Do you think her wounds will heal in just 3 years? And do you think you can regain our trust in such a short time? Don't be ridiculous." My mother's voice echoed angrily as she and my father left the wedding venue. I could hear her speaking through the phone. "Did you see that, Emma?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "I'm sorry for bringing up painful things. I couldn't stand seeing those two act as if nothing happened," she explained. "No, thank you. I feel relieved. It's like you said everything I wanted to say," I admitted. "That's right, Emma. You always keep everything to yourself. I thought it was too kind of you not to tell your colleagues the reason for your divorce." Later, my mother sent me a recording of her conversation with Liam from the wedding. Indeed, as she had said, time doesn't easily heal such wounds. Moreover, Liam showed no signs of remorse, dismissing it all as a thing of the past. I decided to enact my revenge by exposing Liam during a company presentation. I signed up quickly when I saw he was scheduled to speak and soon found myself in a conference room. When it was Liam's turn, his supervisor, unaware of his remarriage, commented, "Liam, you seem even more motivated today, freshly married." "Yes, I'm dedicated to doing my best for my family," he replied cheerfully. He must have known I was present, but that only fueled my determination. I played the recorded audio I received from my mother. The room was startled by the sudden noise from the recording. As they learned about his affair with my sister during our marriage, accusations started flying. "Liam, didn't you claim the divorce was due to different values?" I couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Oh really? Did you say something like that?" "Well, I can't comprehend a value system that includes cheating with your wife's own sister. I apologize for bringing personal matters into this important internal presentation. As of today, I have decided to resign. I have endured this because I value this company, but I cannot continue working alongside him any longer." Just as I prepared to leave, the board members intervened to halt my departure. "Wait a moment, Emma. You're a crucial asset to our company. If anyone should leave, it should be Liam." "Huh? But I was considered to have a promising future here. We held high hopes for you in the past, but recently your attire has been less formal and you seem less focused. It appears you have lost the problem-solving abilities you once demonstrated. We don't have the same expectations for you as before." Kate, who had always been inept at housework and had done little even while living with our parents, became a full-time housewife after marrying Liam. Apparently, she left most of the household chores for him to handle. Without my advice to guide him through work challenges, Liam began causing more problems. Word of his affair with his wife's sister spread throughout the company, damaging his reputation. During a board meeting, it was decided that I would stay with the company while Liam would be transferred to a remote location with the expectation of eventual layoff. Kate, who had been enjoying a comfortable life as a housewife on Liam's earnings, quickly abandoned him upon discovering the affair and moved on to another man. Unfortunately for her, the new man turned out to be a typical freeloader burdened with debt. Now she is struggling, working 2 jobs day and night to make ends meet. As they say, what goes around comes around. When you do wrong, it eventually catches up with you. Watching Liam and Kate face the consequences of their actions, I finally felt ready to begin a new chapter in my life. I'm a 35-year-old office worker. My husband, Kevin, is 6 years older than me, and we've been married for 9 years. Right now, I'm living with my mom for some reasons. Let me explain how this happened. 4 years ago, Kevin and I built a house. At that time, Kevin had just changed jobs and we didn't have much money saved or a high income. Kevin used to work for a big company, but his boss constantly bullied him secretly. This caused Kevin to have trouble sleeping and eventually he couldn't go to work anymore. He saw a psychiatrist and took a 3-month break, but when he didn't get better, he quit his job. After that, we lived on just my salary. Kevin didn't work for 3 months, but slowly started to feel better. He began eating and sleeping well again, and his psychiatrist was happy with his quick recovery. My cheerful, loving Kevin was back. He then started looking for a new job. His experience at the big company helped, but finding a job was hard because he left his last job due to mental health issues. During this time, we found a small company that needed Kevin. The salary was about 3/4 of what he used to make, but he was happy to be working again. He said it was much better than being without a job, which made me happy. This job was also in a field he wanted to work in. We wanted to have children, but it was clear that life would be tough if I stopped working. So I continued working. I also loved my job, and we decided not to have children at that time. Our life was peaceful until my mother, Sarah, was paralyzed in a car accident and needed a wheelchair to get around. My dad had passed away when I was in middle school, and Sarah had been living alone since then. Our family home was old and not suitable for a wheelchair, with many steps. Kevin then said, "I'm worried. Let's live together." Sarah and I were surprised, but I appreciated Kevin's unexpected kindness. Since Kevin had just changed jobs, we were unsure about the future, but we decided to apply for a mortgage. As we expected, it was tough to get a loan because Kevin hadn't been at his job for long. However, we were determined and didn't give up. After trying with several mortgage companies, we finally found one that worked with us and approved our loan. We bought our dream home, which I had always imagined, filled with the smell of wood, thick wooden beams on the ceiling, custom storage spaces, a kitchen tailored for my height, and spacious cypress flooring. Importantly, it was a single-story, barrier-free house, perfect for living comfortably in a wheelchair. We were excited as our house was being built and visited the construction site every day. When our carefully designed home was finished, it had a large yard where my mom, who now rarely went outside, could enjoy sunbathing. However, there was a catch with the land. It was given to us by Kevin's grandfather, who adored Kevin. Kevin's family wasn't wealthy, but when his grandfather was diagnosed with cancer, he started to distribute his assets, giving us the largest plot of land. It felt like winning the lottery, but the land was just a 10-minute walk from Kevin's family home. When we told them my mother would be moving in with us, Kevin's sister laughed and said, "Why is your mother moving in too? How shameless is your family?" Kevin's mother told me that marrying someone different like me would bring trouble. She also harshly said it was terrible for her son to have to care for an old person and called me a curse. Even then, Kevin stood up for my mother and me. He said the land was a gift from his grandfather, and no one should complain. Kevin's mother and sister are really mean. It's amazing that Kevin, who is so kind, comes from that family. He's like a beautiful flower that grew out of mud. Kevin always says his family shows him how not to be. Kevin thinks his grandfather gave us the land because he wanted us to take care of his mother in her old age. He also gave other properties away. Kevin's sister got a parking lot that's a 10-minute walk from their home. It's smaller than our land but makes good money from parking fees. Honestly, I would have preferred that, but a gift is still a gift, and we are thankful. Thanks to my grandfather-in-law, we could build our house without paying for the land and used it to help get a loan. When the house was finished, we invited Kevin's mother and his sister's family over. The builders told us they had visited the house several times without asking us. They showed up late without apologizing and said, "This is kind of like Grandpa's house, so it's like our house too." Kevin's sister came in with muddy shoes and said the house smelled nice and didn't need air fresheners. She and her husband walked around with muddy shoes, ignoring the slippers we offered. When I suggested they use slippers, she laughed and said it was too much trouble and that we could just clean the floor. The visit was uncomfortable from the start, and they didn't bring anything with them. When they saw my mother's room, which is spacious and sunny, Kevin's mother said she would like that room. My mother's room is like a duplex with its own kitchen, almost a second living space. "I want to live here," said my mother-in-law. She then told my mother, "You were lucky to have that accident, weren't you? Thanks to being paralyzed, you moved from that old shack to this nice house. Isn't that a lucky turn of events?" My mother said nothing but looked very sad. I was really angry inside, but before I could say anything, Kevin spoke up. "What did you just say? There are things you should and shouldn't say. It makes me question your humanity. I can't even believe you're part of my family. You're the worst. Apologize now," Kevin demanded firmly. Whether they were amused or not, my mother and sister-in-law glared at me. Then my sister-in-law angrily asked Kevin, "What's this all about?" "It's a total turnoff. It's not cool to invite people over and then be rude to them. Just because you built a house, you think you can act superior." The mother-in-law chimed in, "My son messed up by marrying you. You're a jinx." Kevin didn't stay silent. "Enough is enough. This mess started because of your rude comments. You said the accident was a good thing and called my wife a jinx. I will not forgive that." The mother and sister-in-law looked frustrated by Kevin's strong response. Then my mother, who had been watching everything, said with regret, "It's okay. I am here because of the accident, and it's true I moved from a rundown house to this beautiful one. Your son has always been kind to me. Thank you." Perhaps feeling guilty, the mother and sister-in-law left, giving me a nasty look. My mother then apologized to Kevin. "I'm sorry if I upset your mother and sister. I'm sorry for ruining the mood at our housewarming party." Kevin responded, "No, I should be the one apologizing. It's embarrassing how they lack decency. I'm really sorry, but I am happy to be living with you. Please understand that." With that, my mother started to tear up. Since we live near Kevin's parents' house, the neighbors all know us well. They've known Kevin since he was a child and are very kind to us. 4 months have passed since that day. We were finally settling into our new home, and my mother started to smile more when I received an unexpected call from home while I was at work. We rarely get calls from home, so it surprised me. My bad feeling was right. My mom, sounding very upset, called to tell me something awful. Kevin had collapsed at work. I was shocked and spoke to my boss right away, then rushed to the hospital. On the way, I tried to stay calm by imagining that Kevin would be okay when I got there, joking around like always. But when I arrived, it was a shock to see him with so many tubes attached to him. We had planned to go to a movie that weekend. The doctor told me Kevin was in critical condition and might not wake up. I felt like I was in a movie. I couldn't even cry. Despite my prayers, Kevin passed away at the hospital. My shock continued as my mother and sister-in-law arrived when they heard Kevin had died. My sister-in-law accused me harshly, asking if I had poisoned him or if I was after his life insurance. My mother-in-law also blamed me, saying bad things always happen around me and calling me a jinx. I was too sad to respond. Then my own mother arrived in a care driver's taxi, crying over Kevin's death, which finally made me cry too. We both sobbed loudly. My mother-in-law rudely told us to stop the fake crying. She said Kevin had changed because of me and that she didn't want to see us ever again. Then she left the hospital. A funeral director came to organize Kevin's funeral, and we went to the funeral home. Kevin had died from a brain hemorrhage, which was hard to believe since he was fine that morning. When I told my mother-in-law the funeral plans, she coldly said she wouldn't come because Kevin always sided with my mother and me. She said her daughter wouldn't come either. Many of Kevin's coworkers and friends came to the viewing, but neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law and her husband were there. Many attended the funeral, and it was clear that Kevin was deeply loved. Many people cried for him. It was hard, but maybe this is just the kind of people his family were. I was happy to spend the whole day with those who truly missed my husband. After Kevin's death, I got an email from my mother-in-law, but it was inappropriate, so I didn't reply. She was asking about the life insurance money and kept emailing because I didn't respond. Eventually, she claimed she had a right to it. I chose to ignore it because I wasn't ready to deal with that. When we got home, I noticed a light on inside, which was odd. My mother, Sarah, was confused and thought we had turned off all the lights. I figured maybe I forgot because I was so upset. I told her it was understandable given the situation, and I unlocked the door. When we entered, we could hear the TV, which was very strange. Inside, we found my sister-in-law and her husband sitting there. I was so shocked I couldn't even speak. The living room was full of unfamiliar furniture and boxes. We had no idea what was happening. My sister-in-law said, "Why did you just barge in here?" "Well, it's your first time, so I'll let it slide. We're taking this house. We sold your stuff, so leave." My mother and I were completely shocked. I asked where our furniture and belongings had gone, and she casually said a resale company came and took everything, claiming we had good furniture and they got a good price for it. They bought new furniture with that money, saying, "Who wants furniture that a dead person used? It's bad luck." She added that she cared about such things and our stuff was packed in boxes. She even remarked that we must be minimalists or just poor because we had so few things. The furniture was carefully chosen by my husband and me. I couldn't forgive them for this. My mom was furious too, her face turning beet red, but she was too shocked to respond. I immediately called the resale company. After explaining the situation, they agreed to treat the items as stolen and return them. Now that my husband is gone, dealing with this was the last thing I needed. I don't want anything to do with his family, but I do want to stay in a house that's full of memories of him. While I was wrestling with these feelings, my mother quietly said to me, "What do you think Kevin would say if he were here now?" "He might say we should leave. I'm sure he would." Kevin often mentioned it's good to spend time with people who understand you, but there are some people who will never understand no matter how much you try. It's a waste of time dealing with those people. He was actually talking about his own mother and sister. I realized that if we stayed, his family would keep interfering. Acting on impulse, I signed a lease for an accessible apartment. My mom was surprised by how quickly I made that decision. I asked the resale company to hold on to the furniture for a few days, and it was moved to our new apartment 3 days later. In exchange for moving out, I made my mother-in-law and sister-in-law promise to cut ties with us. So a new life began for just my mother and me in the apartment. It turns out Kevin had many life insurance policies, almost obsessively so. He used to joke always with a smile, "When I die, you guys will be rich." True to his word, he left enough money for my mother and me to be comfortable for the rest of our lives. Since he couldn't secure a mortgage when we bought the house, I, being employed at a major corporation, bought the house in my name. I made sure that even if something happened to Kevin first, I wasn't going to keep paying a mortgage for a house I wouldn't live in. According to our agreement, the house would be auctioned off if the mortgage wasn't paid for 4 months. Time flew by, and 4 months passed quickly. Then I started receiving a lot of calls from my sister-in-law, Emily, and my mother-in-law, Maria. My call history was filled with their names, and it was getting scary, like something out of a horror movie. They were incredibly persistent. So I finally answered the phone. They were furious because the house was being sold. Apparently, when they tried to return, they found out they couldn't get in because of a seizure notice. Emily and her husband had moved out of their apartment since Kevin passed away, and Emily had also quit her job. I suggested they move back into their parents' house since they were panicking about suddenly being homeless. Surprisingly, Maria had gotten so caught up in gambling that she couldn't keep up and had sold her own house. It turns out they had been living together for the past 5 months. I also heard that they sold their main source of income, a parking lot in front of the train station, a long time ago. Now, Maria and Emily's family are completely homeless. When Maria said, "I'm sorry for everything. Let's get along. Can you lend me some money, please?" I replied, "I think it's best if you stay away since I'm a jinx. We're strangers now that we've severed ties." Maria was quiet after mumbling weakly. In my mind, I was thinking, who's the real bad luck charm here? Then when I said I wouldn't lend them a single cent, Emily, who had been listening next to Maria, shouted, "You devil. Bring us the money right now." I replied, "I am a devil and bad luck, so I'm going to hang up now," and ended the call. In reality, I involved a lawyer for the past 5 months to push for the auction of the house. I thought it was an unusual case, but apparently, it's not that uncommon. The house was sold without any major issues, giving our family a moment of peace. We plan to find a new home with the money Kevin left us. Since it's just my mother and me, we don't need a big house. We'd rather prioritize security as 2 women living together. So I chose a condominium with minimal noise disturbance. I remember something my husband always said when we built our home. People can get energy from the sun, so let's create a place where your mother can enjoy her hobby of reading in the garden without feeling self-conscious. With those words, he had made a spacious courtyard for her. So I looked for a condo with a large balcony where she could enjoy her coffee and read. It's smaller than our previous home, but the room is spacious enough to house the furniture my husband probably chose. The piece of land that was gifted to us by Kevin's grandfather was expansive, and the house sold for more than expected. With that money, we're moving forward. I recently bought a luxurious condominium with exceptional security features, a choice I'm sure would have comforted my always cautious husband, Kevin. The peace of mind that comes from living in such a secure place is invaluable, especially after the tumultuous experiences with my in-laws. Life has taken a dramatic turn since Kevin passed away. Amidst my grief, I've been dealing with the fallout from his family's actions, which frankly has been draining. Following the auction of the house, Kevin's mother, Maria, and his sister found themselves without a place to live. Despite their desperate attempts, including trying to borrow money from neighbors, they couldn't secure any financial assistance and ended up in public housing. Living in public housing, they continued their old habits, causing disturbances that have started to concern the community. For instance, they recently had a barbecue on their small balcony, an act that left many locals in disbelief given the limited space and safety concerns. Such thoughtlessness seems typical of them and reflects the disregard they've always shown for others' comfort. Moreover, their financial difficulties appear to have led to frequent loud arguments that disrupt the nightly peace, an auditory testament to their ongoing strife. My sister-in-law's husband has since left, leaving just her and Maria to fend for themselves. Their situation is a stark contrast to the quiet, stable life I now lead with my mother. We're both 2-person households, but while my home is a sanctuary, theirs is a source of constant conflict and unease. It's become so disruptive that neighbors are banding together, hoping to evict them to restore some semblance of peace. It's a harsh reminder that no matter where you go, being a nuisance can make you unwelcome. Reflecting on these events, I realize how the phrase, "what goes around comes around," rings true. My goal is to live quietly and peacefully, distanced from the embarrassing turmoil associated with my former family. I believe Kevin watches over us, perhaps with mixed feelings about the chaos his family continues to perpetuate in contrast to the tranquility he loved during his life. As I move forward, my focus is on living a life that causes no trouble to others. I want to honor Kevin's memory not just through words but through actions. He always advocated for a life well lived, surrounded by people who bring joy and understanding. Despite the unfortunate family dynamics he left behind, I'm committed to building a life filled with positivity and peace. The decision to buy this condominium wasn't just about finding a new home. It was about creating a haven where my mother and I could feel safe and secure. The quiet, the order, and the absence of drama allow us to enjoy each other's company and focus on the things that truly matter. It's smaller than our previous house, but every corner of this new space is cherished, every moment of silence savored. I've learned a lot about resilience and moving forward. The memories of Kevin, filled with love and laughter, inspire me every day. They remind me of the importance of living authentically and compassionately, ensuring that his spirit of kindness is carried forward. Living well is perhaps the best tribute I can offer to a man who gave so much and asked for so little in return. In this new chapter, amidst the serenity of our chosen sanctuary, I am determined to live not just for myself, but in a way that would make Kevin proud. I really want some chocolate cake, but I'm stuck in bed feeling awful. Suddenly, my mother-in-law Grace starts yelling at me to get her a cake right now. I couldn't take it anymore and snapped at her. I told her to get her own cake because I only have a month left to live. My name is Olivia, and I'm 28 years old. I met my husband David through a friend, and we got married after dating for 3 years. We don't have kids yet, but we're enjoying our time together. David's family owns a small factory with about 30 workers. They're doing pretty well in their area. The company was started by David's late dad and has grown thanks to everyone's hard work. Now David's sister, Sophia, is in charge of the company. She's not married, but she's really good at running the business. David thinks she got her skills from mom because they both have great communication abilities. Sophia is really nice and easy to talk to, even when we first met. Sophia, my sister-in-law, greeted me warmly, calling me cute and expressing her happiness to have me as a sister. As someone who only had brothers, it felt nice to gain a sister. However, despite this pleasant start, there's a problem with my mother-in-law. Our company has coffee breaks at 10 o'clock a.m. and 3 o'clock p.m. Times I dread. Here's why. Whenever I'm asked to get mom's coffee, it instantly ruins my mood. Our family home is next to the factory, and after my father-in-law passed away, my mother-in-law chose to retire and stay home. She seems to look forward to these coffee breaks, always saying, "I've been waiting for you, Olivia." I wanted to talk to Sophia once, but she gave me a disappointed look. Naturally, she wasn't in a good mood, and before leaving with a forced smile, she said, "Hey, I have something to say to you. So sit here," and then she complains to me until the break is over. She often comments about why we haven't had kids yet, saying it's not something we can control. If I stay quiet, she gets even more irritated. Why such a gloomy face? I wonder why David chose someone like you. Plus, even your parents, who knows how long you'll live. The sooner the better, she said that with a sigh. Hearing her talk like that, especially about my parents, really hurts. And there's a reason for that. When David and I decided to get married and met his family, this happened. What, you don't have parents? My mother-in-law looked shocked when I told her. It's not like I never had parents. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 10, and my dad died of a heart attack when I was 20. My memories of my mom are fuzzy, but my dad raised my brother and me all by himself. I deeply regret that he passed away before I could repay his kindness. When people hear about my situation, they usually look at me with pity and say, "You must have had a hard time." But my mother-in-law reacted differently. "So you might not live long either, huh?" She actually said that while I was stunned by her response. It was so rude and insensitive. My husband David told me that despite my shock, my mother-in-law kept complaining, insisting it was an important issue. Should I rethink this marriage? Just as I was considering that, Sophia, who had been quiet until then, suddenly slammed her hand on the table and said, "What are you talking about?" She said it so quietly that everyone in the room froze. Then my mother-in-law said, "Right, Sophia, you agree with me, don't you?" That's what she said. Sophia's response was icy. "What?" I told Mom, "David chose Olivia himself, and she's wonderful. Why can't you support that?" She said this to my mother-in-law with a cold stare. My mother-in-law, who adored her daughter, seemed shocked by Sophia's words. After that, she stopped making mean comments except when we were alone. Even during the coffee breaks, she looked disappointed when I brought her coffee instead of Sophia. Luckily, David and I rented a room near his family home, so I only had to endure her complaints during those 10-minute coffee breaks. I'm relieved we don't live together. But my peace was suddenly shattered that year. A record-breaking hurricane brought a lot of misfortune my way. Olivia, something terrible has happened. I'd never heard David sound so panicked. I hurried to the living room and found it in chaos. What's going on? Our ceiling was leaking badly because of the hurricane. It wasn't just our room, the owner told us it was happening in other rooms too. It seemed impossible to fix while staying there, so we needed to find somewhere else to live. Sophia suggested cheerfully, "Why worry? Just stay with us. Your commute will be 30 seconds. She said this innocently, so we ended up staying with David's family for a while. Welcome home, David. It must have been tough, but Mom is happy we can live together again. My mother-in-law greeted us warmly, but David mostly ignored her, acting like a rebellious teenager. Then she said, "Oh, Olivia, you're here too. I didn't notice because you're so quiet. Smile more." My husband looked frustrated, and all I could do was force a smile, knowing we'd be staying there for a while. After moving in, I noticed something odd. The first time was during dinner on our first night. Wanting to show my appreciation, I cooked bread, soup, and steak. It wasn't fancy, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law said it was delicious and finished it all. I felt genuinely relieved. After a while, my mother-in-law suddenly stood up and brought a container from the fridge, humming a tune. She opened it and piled a ton of its contents onto her steak. Mom, you're still eating that stuff." My husband, sitting next to me, looked disgusted. Sophia, my sister-in-law, rolled her eyes and said she won't stop no matter how many times I tell her. "I've given up." Then she burst into laughter. At first, I couldn't tell what was on top of the steak, but upon closer inspection, I realized it was jam. While it's not uncommon to have sweet sauces on meat, adding jam to a seasoned steak seemed bizarre. "When you eat something salty, you crave something sweet, right?" "That's why," she said, looking quite pleased with herself. Honestly, it gave me heartburn just watching her. For the record, I'm not a fan of sweet sauces on meat. "Come on, Olivia. Why don't you try it? It's delicious," my mother-in-law said, turning to me. For the first time, I didn't want to eat it, but I forced a smile. Apparently, that wasn't the reaction she was hoping for. "I'm recommending it for a reason. You might live longer if you follow my example." With that parting shot, she retreated to her room, leaving me speechless. My husband and sister-in-law apologized, saying, Sorry, Mom's at it again with her nonsense." Apparently, my mother-in-law has a serious sweet tooth and doesn't feel her day is complete without eating cake. Surprisingly, her annual health checkups always come back normal. Come to think of it, she's always eating cake during our 3:00 p.m. coffee breaks. I remembered that I like cake too, but having it every day would be boring. Plus, what about blood sugar levels? I've always been careful about my health, especially since my parents had short lifespans. So my mother-in-law's jam steak was quite surprising. Wait till Sophia buy cake every day. Caught off guard, Sophia admitted, "Yeah, she makes me go buy it. She says it's embarrassing for her to do it herself." Thanks to that, I've become good friends with all the local cake shops, Sophia said, laughing. My husband David chimed in, "Sophia, this isn't a laughing matter. Mom's getting older. She needs to start caring about her health. I've always left it to Sophia to deal with Mom, and I feel bad about it." With that, he looked frustrated. "Well, I think you guys will have to help out more from now on," Sophia said cheerfully, and I prepared myself for more interactions with my mother-in-law. Living with my in-laws made my commute much shorter, so I took the lead in doing household chores before and after work. I tried to talk to my mother-in-law, but she often ignored me or gave me the cold shoulder. Despite that, she never missed a chance to complain about the kids during our coffee breaks. Since moving here, I've been having more rough days. It's probably the stress. My mood was low and my husband noticed. He offered several times to go to the doctor with me. "Let's move out and stay at a hotel for a while," he suggested, but I turned it down because it felt like a waste of money, and the nearest hotel was still a bit far. Then the worst news came, a week-long business trip. I was stunned when my husband told me. The reason for my dread? Sophia, my sister-in-law, would also be going, meaning I'd be alone with my mother-in-law. Yeah, I said it. My husband offered to take me with him, but I thought, it's just a week. I hope I can manage, especially since I still wasn't feeling well. On the day they left, Sophia sent me a mother-in-law survival guide to my phone. If anything happens, just give her cake and you'll be fine. I couldn't help but laugh. The guide included local cake shops and my mother-in-law's favorite cakes from each. For someone like me who was gearing up for a tough week, this information was a lifesaver. In a week, our home renovations would be done, and we could move back. I thought optimistically, I could handle this, but that hope faded on the first night. When I returned from work, my mother-in-law was blocking the entrance. You know why I'm angry, don't you? She snapped. No, I don't. I'm not psychic, I replied, losing patience. You missed both the 10 o'clock a.m. and 3 o'clock p.m. coffee breaks today. Her words caught me off guard. Indeed, with my husband and Sophia away and end-of-month tasks piling up, I'd completely forgotten about my mother-in-law's coffee breaks, and I never had a coffee break myself. I thought she'd understand since she used to work, but she yelled at me the moment we were alone. You start this harassment, you wicked woman, she said with an angry look. I felt a huge disconnect. Why was I being yelled at like this? Did I deserve to be called wicked? Suppressing my anger, I thought, it's just a few more days and said, I did buy cake during my lunch break. It's in the office fridge. Sorry I didn't bring it here. Her face instantly changed from angry to smiling. Let's forget about today. Don't forget tomorrow, okay? She said cheerfully and went back to her room. From then on, I made sure never to forget the coffee breaks, knowing how much trouble it would cause if I upset my mother-in-law. On the day my husband and Sophia were supposed to return, I felt incredibly stressed. I was hit with nausea, headaches, and a loss of appetite. I took the day off and went to the hospital. It's pretty serious. Can your family come right away? I couldn't stop crying at the doctor's words. I was told I have cancer and at most 6 months, maybe even just 1 month, to live. I returned home, my face stained with tears, my body trembling, and collapsed onto the bed. The door burst open. What are you doing, skipping work? Sophie and David are working hard, and you're slacking off? Her yelling worsened my headache. I didn't have the energy to respond, so I just said, I'm not feeling well, and closed my eyes. Mother-in-law didn't seem to care. She didn't want to leave the room and kept complaining to me. She said things like, that's why you can't have kids, and who knows if you'll live long. I just stayed silent, pretending to be asleep. Then suddenly, she asked about today's coffee break. Is she really this insensitive? I thought, opening my eyes to see her standing over me. Grace, I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well enough to go shopping today. Could you please? She cut me off. I don't care. I want chocolate cake now. Go buy it. You're probably faking it. She screamed at me louder than ever. My frustration exploded at the woman in front of me, who was acting selfishly like a child. Shut up. Listen to me. I have 1 month to live. Go buy your own damn cake, you idiot. My words seemed to shock my mother-in-law, who stared at me wide-eyed. Then, from behind her, Mom, what are you doing? And Olivia, what do you mean by 1 more month? My husband, looking pale, and my sister-in-law, equally concerned, were standing there. Oh, weren't you supposed to come back tomorrow? Ignoring the visibly shaken mother-in-law, my husband came to my side. I felt so relieved by his action that I burst into tears. I can't take it anymore. The doctor says it might be cancer, and I'm not feeling well, but you keep nagging me to go buy cake. Enough is enough. Stop bothering me about the kids too. Just leave me alone, you idiot. I let out all my resentment towards my mother-in-law while crying. My husband and sister-in-law looked at her with cold eyes. Sending a sick person to buy cake. Are you stupid? Sophia, who's usually all smiles, had a face I'd never seen before, a terrifying one. You've been making snide remarks about the kids. Look, I didn't say anything because it's a private matter, but the reason we can't have kids is me. My husband raised his voice as he said this. In reality, about a year after we got married, we consulted a doctor because we were having trouble conceiving. The tests showed that I was fine, but my husband's numbers were low. He felt really down about it and kept apologizing to me with a sad face. I didn't want to make him feel that way, so I avoided talking about kids as much as possible. I did want children, but I thought life with just my husband was enough. I never considered leaving him because we couldn't have kids. I didn't tell my mother-in-law because I knew she'd start nagging. She listened to my husband's words with a face like her soul had been sucked out. Just then, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed it was the hospital. Hello, yes, right now. My husband just got home. Okay, understood. The doctor who had called earlier sounded urgent, asking us to come right away. Am I really that sick? I started to cry from the anxiety. It's okay, Olivia. Can you stand? I'm with you. My husband, who also looked like he was about to cry, and I rushed to the hospital. As we were leaving, I caught a glimpse of my mother-in-law getting a stern lecture from Sophia. When we arrived at the hospital, we were immediately ushered into a room where the doctor and even the hospital director were waiting to offer us a deep apology. It was a misdiagnosis. According to the doctor, they had mixed up my medical records with another patient who had the same name and birth date as me. I couldn't believe such a thing could happen, but the doctor did look extremely worn out. This incident was later covered in a local news segment, and the hospital vowed to review its working conditions. We were then referred to another hospital. When we returned to my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law seemed to have been scolded by Sophia and was shrinking in her seat. Sophia later told me she was worried that her newlywed son might lose his wife and be heartbroken. It might be love turned inside out, but it was a real hassle seeing our tear-streaked faces. Even my mother-in-law broke down. Did I really do something that bad? She started crying. So what about Olivia? Sophia asked with a concerned look. I'm pregnant, I said, tears of joy filling my eyes. My husband was also shedding tears of happiness beside me. We immediately went to the maternity hospital as advised. It's still early, but yes, you're pregnant. We can confirm the heartbeat. Hearing that, we both burst into tears, even though we were in a hospital. Sophia also cried, saying, I'm so glad, so very glad. As for what happened next, Sophia got engaged to her long-term boyfriend and moved to another state with him after quitting her job. We had heard about this beforehand, so it wasn't a surprise. My husband, who was taking over as the new CEO, seemed to have his hands full with client visits. The business trip, by the way, was for that reason. He told me later that he was able to come home a day early because it ended sooner than expected. Mother-in-law seemed to know nothing about it. What? Getting married, quitting her job, and moving to another state. She was shocked. Sophia told her, Yeah, I told you. Remember? Well, it doesn't matter. It's settled. Mother-in-law was in a daze, and we all laughed. We returned home to find our leaky roof repaired and our room looking brand new. We cheered in delight. Things remained awkward with mother-in-law. My husband was angrier than I was and said he never wanted to see her again. But mother-in-law started showing up occasionally during our coffee breaks, holding not cake but small snacks like biscuits. She had stopped the daily cakes and jam steaks, apparently trying to be more health-conscious now that she knew a grandchild was on the way. Employees who had worked there since my father-in-law was CEO seemed happy to see mother-in-law. So I realized she wasn't inherently a bad person. Our conversations gradually increased, and she stopped complaining. When our daughter Emma was born, mother-in-law transformed. She started doing things like buying diapers and leaving side dishes for dinner, saying, Feel free to eat. You're always working so hard. Even when she knew I was home, she'd send a message and leave without ringing the doorbell. The side dishes were in a cooler, and I appreciated her thoughtfulness. I felt I could get along with this version of mother-in-law. What really convinced me was when Emma was born. Mother-in-law took my hand and said, Thank you, Olivia. Really, thank you. Seeing her tears, I knew she was sincere. Sophia also seems to be doing well and recently announced her pregnancy. It seems like it won't be long before we all gather at the in-laws' house for a friendly meal. Hello, I'm Kayla, a 36-year-old woman. The past few months have been really tough for me, and I'm having to relearn a lot of things. My husband Tom caused a lot of the trouble I'm in, but a kind person stepped in and helped me avoid even more pain. First, let me tell you about the people in my story. The first person is my sister, Maya. She's 6 years younger than me and very pretty. Growing up, we didn't get along because I was a nerd and she was popular. She always picked on me and seemed jealous for some reason. My mom tried to help us get along, but it didn't really work. When I went to college, we didn't talk much. But after I graduated and she was a teenager, we started talking again. Our relationship got a little better, but we never got really close. That was the best we could do, and I was okay with that. Next, let me tell you about my ex-husband, Tom. We met at work and got along really well. We dated for about 3 years before getting married. We worked hard and bought our first house together. I earned more money, so the mortgage and deed were in my name. After 2 years of marriage, Tom asked me about having children. Honey, I was wondering about something, and I need you to think about this with an open mind. All right, what is it? I've been thinking that we've been together for a while now, and maybe we could start a family of our own. Tom, you know how I feel about that. I know, but we have the money for it, and it would be really cute to have little versions of us running around, don't you think? Yeah, but kids are a lot of work and responsibility. We're the most hardworking and responsible people we know. Come on, give it some thought, okay? I promise I'll help take care of them. Just keep that in mind, okay? Even though I wasn't keen on having kids, I gave in because Tom kept bringing it up. First, we had a son, and 3 years later, we had a daughter. Initially, Tom was very helpful, but that quickly changed. Suddenly, I was responsible for everything at home, including the kids. After our first child, Tom insisted I stop working because he had gotten a promotion and was earning more than me. I tried to resist, but eventually, I decided it wasn't worth the fight and accepted my new role. To avoid getting bored at home, I took up a new hobby, hosting dinners. I often invited my mom and sister, who lived nearby, and my mother-in-law, Megan, whenever she was in town. Eventually, I started to feel comfortable in my new life. I got to spend a lot of time with my family, and that made me happy. Tom and I were doing okay. I had gone through some trauma after giving birth to our second child, where I almost died, which affected our relationship. I didn't think anything else was wrong, but oh, how wrong I was. As I was cleaning my room, I found a pair of panties that definitely weren't mine. My heart sank as I stared at them, wondering if I wasn't enough for my husband. I had been feeling different lately, but I had just had our second child. It had been over a year since then, and I was still recovering. I had been going to therapy, making slow progress. But it didn't seem enough because Tom was cheating on me. Once the shock wore off, I was filled with anger and betrayal. I needed to know who my husband was cheating on me with and why. First, I sent Tom a picture of the underwear and asked him whose they were. Then, I checked his laptop. I logged into his social media accounts and went through his chats. At first, I didn't see any unknown women, which confused me more. I looked through his messages but found nothing. In my desperation, I went through every chat, even though I knew it was foolish because everyone in his contacts was someone. I couldn't believe that anyone in my life could hurt me that much. Then I realized that my sister's contact ID was everywhere I looked. At first, I didn't think much of it because why would my sister and husband talking be suspicious? But when I checked their chats, I felt sick to my stomach. They were full of pictures and videos of them in bed, messages about how much they love each other, and plans for Tom to leave me. I couldn't believe my own sister would do something so awful. Our relationship had never been perfect, but this was a whole new level of betrayal. First, I threw up because I was so disgusted. Then, I tried calling Tom, but he didn't answer. So I called my sister. Maya, hey, what's up? Don't hey, what's up me? Seriously, what's wrong with you? I don't know about mine, but I do know that I found a pair of your panties in my bedroom. Have you been sleeping with Tom? Yeah, for a while now. Why, Kayla? Seriously, you thought it was okay to sleep with my husband because you thought I was boring. And being my sister didn't even stop you. Look, I thought I was helping you out. I was keeping Tom busy so you could focus on the kids. Are you serious? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Look, we didn't mean for it to go this far, okay? I only did it because he kept hitting on me, and he's a nice guy, Kayla. But he was my husband. Why would you help tear our family apart? I just want what's best for Tom, okay? If I'm the best for him, then so be it. You're disgusting. I hung up, unable to believe her nerve. I just lay in bed and cried. I never thought my life would come to this. Eventually, my youngest woke up crying, so I tended to her. I felt empty as I went through the motions of the day. I couldn't let my kids know something was wrong. They didn't need that worry. I picked up my older child from school, made dinner, and when they asked where their dad was, I lied and said he was working late. At some point, my anger turned into worry. It was almost 11 o'clock at night, and Tom still wasn't home. I tried calling him multiple times, but he didn't answer. I even tried calling my sister to see if he was there, but she didn't pick up either. Exhausted from the day, I went to bed, hoping it was all just a bad dream. The next morning, I woke up feeling like something was wrong. I looked around and realized Tom's things were gone from the room. I checked the cupboards and drawers, and most of his stuff was gone from the house too. He had left while I was asleep, without saying a word. I couldn't believe it. He just left me without even trying to talk. I didn't know what to do. All I could think about was taking care of my kids first. Then, I'd figure out everything else. I woke up, got the kids ready, dropped off the oldest at school, and then took the youngest to my mom's place. She could tell something was off because I was distant. All I could think about was how I'd managed to raise 2 kids alone. Whenever I came back to reality, I remember I had to tell my mom about my sister and husband. Eventually, she couldn't wait any longer and asked what was wrong. Okay, I've had enough of your silence. What's going on? I don't know how to say this. Why don't you start from the beginning? Well, I found out that Tom has been cheating on me. What? How do you know? I found another woman's underwear in our room. When I asked Tom about it, he didn't answer and then left. He left? What do you mean? When I woke up this morning, all his things were gone. Gone? You didn't try to stop him? I didn't even realize when he came back. I fell asleep around midnight, and when I woke up, all his stuff was gone. Oh my God, my poor girl, I'm so sorry this happened. Yeah, it gets worse. Oh no, what happened? Do you know who Tom cheated on you with? You mean you know who he cheated with? Yeah, I snooped through his things to find out. I wouldn't have tolerated this under normal circumstances, but this is different. So, who is it? Maya. Excuse me? What? Are you serious? Yeah, my husband has been cheating on me with my own sister. I called her to ask about it, and she was so casual about it. She said they were in love, and she believed she was the best for him, so she was going to keep being with him. Oh my God, what has Maya done? I don't even know how I'm going to survive. I have 2 kids to raise and I need to find a job too. Look, why don't you just get some rest while I try to process this? I'll be here to help you, okay? Yeah, okay, thanks Mom. I had become numb to everything that had happened, so telling my mom wasn't as hard as I thought. I ended up sleeping while my mom took care of my youngest. When I woke up, I heard my baby crying and my mom yelling. I rushed out and saw my mom on the phone looking angry. She hung up and seemed surprised to see me. She apologized for the noise but didn't say more. I knew she had been giving Maya a piece of her mind. Over the next few days, Mom stayed with us. It was easier having one person move and then 3. Maya kept trying to contact our mom, but she asked me to block Maya. It was comforting to have someone understand my feelings when I felt so alone. I found out through mutual friends that Tom and Maya got married. They reached out to me, concerned and confused. I had to explain everything, which was humiliating, but they were supportive. They all blocked Tom and Maya and refused to associate with them. But I found out they got married the day after Tom left us. It hurt to know, but I shouldn't have expected anything different from them. When I told my mom, she was furious. You should know, my mom is usually calm, so seeing her so angry with my sister was surprising. It was great to have her financial support. She wasn't obligated to help, but she did her best for us. She even helped me get job interviews because I wanted to contribute now that Tom wasn't there to stop me. Taking care of the kids was manageable, but when they asked about Tom, I had to hold back tears. Still, we got through it. A week later, I got a letter from Tom. I didn't want anything to do with it. I figured it was some apology, but I was done with him. A week was too long to try to fix things, especially after he ran away from his family. So I did the next best thing I could think of. I burned the letter. But afterward, I couldn't help but be curious about what it said. Sometimes I wished I had read it before burning it, but then I reminded myself that nothing he could have said would change how I felt about him and what he did. The next day, my mom and I took the kids to the fair. We had a blast, and it was nice to be in a lively place after everything. I finally got to have fun and laugh, which felt great after such a tough time. That night, my mom and I relaxed with a bottle of wine, and I told her about the letter. So something came in the mail for me last night. Oh, what was it? It was a letter from Tom. What? What did it say? I don't know. What do you mean? You opened it, right? No, I didn't want to deal with anything he had to say, so I burned it. You burned it? Kayla, what if they were official divorce papers? The envelope didn't look legal at all. I'm sure it wasn't that. Well, if you're sure. What do you think was in it? I don't know. Maybe a weak apology or a request for his stuff back. I wouldn't be surprised. But how are you feeling about all of this now? Well, today was a good day. It's tough, especially when the kids keep asking where their dad is. What do I even tell them? It's slowly getting better, but only a little. As long as it's improving. I'm always here for you, and just so you know, I'm planning to cut ties with your sister. Everything I have will go to you and the kids. Oh, Mom, that means a lot, but are you sure? Maya is still your daughter. I know you and Maya had your differences, but what she did is unforgivable. I raised both of you better than this, and Maya clearly didn't care. So she's no longer my daughter. I would have been upset if Mom changed her mind easily, but I knew Maya was still her child. I couldn't imagine how hard it must have been for Mom to make that decision, because I could never do that to my kids. It made me even more grateful to have someone so supportive. Another 3 days passed, and I heard a knock on the door. It was strange because I wasn't expecting anyone, and besides my mom, who was at work, no one ever visited. I opened the door cautiously and saw 2 men in black suits. I only opened the door a little and asked who they were. They said they were lawyers and had something for me. They handed me a note and then a check. It was made out to me, and it was for $750,000. My jaw dropped when I saw the amount. I tried to tell them there must be a mistake, but they said there wasn't and urged me to read the note. The note began with, "Thank you for saving me." As I read on, I realized the money was from my mother-in-law, Megan. She explained that she had visited us 3 days ago, but no one was home. She called Tom, who tried to make it seem like he couldn't get in, but I had changed the locks after he left. Megan sensed something was wrong with Tom's behavior and pressed him until he confessed everything. She was disgusted by his actions. Megan felt sorry for what I had gone through and decided to leave all her inheritance to me and her grandkids. She thanked me for preventing her from making a mistake and for not trusting her son with her assets. That's what the check was for. The lawyers then told me that Megan had been terminally ill and had passed away just the day before. She wanted me to have the money right after her death to ensure her daughter-in-law and grandkids were well taken care of. Tears filled my eyes at Megan's kindness and loss. She was truly remarkable, always standing up for what was right. It was one of the reasons Tom had always been afraid of her. Yet I found her comforting. She stayed true to her word and supported me until her last breath. A few days later, Tom called. I already knew what he was going to say, but I decided to hear him out. "What did you do?" "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean, Tom. You'll have to be more specific." "What are you talking about?" "Why weren't you home that day? I specifically asked you to be. I sent you a letter asking you to pretend everything was normal while my mom visited." "Oh, is that what the letter said?" "You didn't read it." "No, I burned it." "You betrayed me. My mother was going to help me with the inheritance, but you took it all because you're selfish." "That's ironic coming from you. You abandoned your family and only cared about contacting me when it involved your inheritance. Love can't be forced. I did what was best for me, and your mother did what was best for us. Don't ever try to contact me or the kids again. Goodbye." After that, things moved quickly. I filed for divorce, and I was granted full custody of the kids. Tom tried to fight for the inheritance, but Megan had made it clear that I was the one to receive it, so he didn't succeed. Tom and Maya tried to pressure me into giving them some of the money, but I stood my ground and refused. Life has become easier since we got the money. I put a portion aside for my kids' college and invested the rest. My mom could retire, and I started working. My kids have come to terms with their dad not coming back, and when they're older, I'll tell them everything. I'm still hurting, but I know things can only get better from here. When my husband found out that I couldn't inherit my father's money, he started yelling. "What? You can't get any of his money? If that's the case, I don't want to be with you anymore. I want a divorce right now." After that, I got back at my husband and my sister, who married each other right away. My name is Chloe. I'm a 32-year-old office worker, and I've been married to my husband George for 2 years. I met George through a relative, and we got married. My family had some money, but since we were the only daughters, my relatives worried about who would take over. They introduced me to George, saying it would be fine for him to join our family. My husband, George, didn't officially join our family, but he started living with me at my parents' home. My mother passed away a few years ago, so it was just my father, my husband, and me living in my parents' house. My husband was very kind and treated my father well, so he seemed like a really good person. However, a relative who introduced him to me told me something worrying right before our marriage. I know it's strange for me to say this since I was the one who introduced George to you, but he's kind of obsessed with money, so be careful. I had already married him and was about to have a wedding ceremony, so it was too late to do anything about it. But I hadn't noticed any signs that he was obsessed with money, so I went ahead with the marriage. Even after getting married, I kept a close eye on my husband because of what I had heard. But I didn't see any signs of money obsession from him. However, he seemed to be interested in my father's money and would casually ask about it when he was having a drink with my father. My father was open about it, so I didn't worry too much. Another thing my husband was curious about was my younger sister. She is 5 years younger than me, and unlike me, who is calm, she is lively and outgoing with a vibrant social life filled with men. She doesn't look like me, and my husband was surprised when he first saw her. Your sister has a completely different vibe from you, Chloe, doesn't she? Seeing my husband fascinated by my beautiful sister, with her striking looks contrasting my plain and boring appearance, gave me mixed feelings. However, the relative who introduced me to George was worried that if I, being modest and plain-looking, couldn't get married, there would be no one to inherit after my family. I thought there was no need to worry because I had a beautiful sister. But later, I understood why that relative was worried. My father was very lenient with my sister, letting her go to college after high school and even to a vocational school after she graduated from college. My sister didn't have a particular goal. She just didn't want to work. On the other hand, my mother was strict with her, insisting she should get a job right after college. But my father overruled my mother and let her go to vocational school. After graduating from vocational school, my sister got a job at a company owned by a friend of my father's. But she quit after just 6 months. I was shocked by her excuse for quitting. I couldn't show my full potential at that company. My mother and I were puzzled by how my sister spoke as if she had already mastered her job after only 6 months. But my father believed her and quickly arranged for her to work at a different company. After a while at the new job, our mother fell ill and had to be hospitalized. While our mother was in the hospital, my sister visited every day, often skipping work. Eventually, she quit that job too, claiming she needed to take care of our mother. However, her idea of caregiving mostly involved being in the same room as our mother, chatting or spending most of her time staring at her smartphone in the waiting room. After our mother passed away, I took on the responsibility of managing her affairs, including picking up her laundry from the hospital and ensuring she had fresh clothes. Meanwhile, my sister wasn't much help. Our mother may have enjoyed having her around to chat with, but as her health declined over a month, she couldn't even hold conversations anymore. Within 2 weeks of her condition worsening, she passed away. Both my father and sister were too shocked to arrange the funeral, so I took charge of that. Thankfully, our relatives pitched in, and we gave our mother a proper farewell. Following our mother's death, my sister moved out of our parents' house and started working part-time. However, her earnings weren't enough to cover her rent and utilities, so our father began footing those bills. It seemed she was spending her money on fun rather than saving. Whenever her part-time income fell short, she turned to our father for financial support. Our mother used to be strict with her, so even when she started working, our father didn't give her an allowance. Now, though, he provides her with whatever she needs. I realized that both my father and sister were content with their financial arrangement, so I didn't see any issue. Even after I got married and moved in with my husband at my parents' place, my father continued giving my sister an allowance. At that time, I didn't notice, but it turns out my sister was also asking my husband for money, and he was giving it to her willingly. He couldn't refuse her and told her to keep it a secret from me, saying, "Don't tell Chloe about this, okay? She might get jealous." My sister lived off this allowance from our father and the money from my husband, doing part-time work when she felt like it. However, this lifestyle couldn't last because our father fell ill and had to be hospitalized. While I juggled visits to the hospital between work and caring for our father, my sister never showed up. Instead, she started calling me and demanding money. "Since I've been getting money from Dad every month, I need you to continue that." The rent and utility bills are all being paid from Dad's account anyway, she said angrily, revealing this information for the first time. I was furious with my sister. Instead of worrying about our hospitalized father, she was only concerned about her own finances. Despite wanting to hang up, I knew my sister was also in a tough spot, so I asked her how much money our father was giving her each month. How much does Dad give you each month? You really need to find a job soon and start supporting yourself. In a grumpy tone, my sister replied, "Stop nagging me. I was getting $1,000 every month, not including rent." I was taken aback by my sister proudly stating the amount. It made me worry that with such a substantial monthly allowance, she might lose any motivation to work seriously. I assumed our father would recover soon after his hospitalization, so I didn't see it as a major issue to keep supporting my sister financially. However, our father's condition suddenly took a turn for the worse, and I urgently reached out to our relatives. The doctor also informed me of his critical condition, leaving me deeply shocked. I desperately needed support from my husband during this tough time, but he claimed to be busy with work and rarely visited the hospital. When he did come, he'd ask insensitive questions like, "Your father must have a huge inheritance, right? Since you and your sister are the only heirs, you'll split it evenly, won't you?" I was speechless in response to my husband's focus solely on the inheritance. It dawned on me that this was what my relatives meant when they warned me about his obsession with money. I felt a deep sense of disappointment. Even when I called my sister to tell her about our father's critical condition, she only cared about her own financial needs. "Forget about that. Just make sure you keep sending me money every month. I can't survive without it." The call ended abruptly. I was furious at my sister's selfish words, but I also felt uneasy hearing a faint male voice in the background that I recognized all too well. It gave me a sinking feeling. About a month later, our father passed away, but neither my sister nor my husband was present in his final moments. Having gone through my mother's funeral, I understood the weight of organizing such an event. To add to the burden, neither my husband nor my sister offered any help. My sister didn't even attend the funeral. My husband did show up, but as soon as it ended, he disappeared, citing work. Even the relative who introduced us noticed his absence and questioned me about it. "What's going on with your husband? It's odd for him to be missing like this, isn't it?" All I could manage was a bitter smile in response. "He seems tied up with work. He had to head back home," I explained to the relative, who sighed in response. Yet it was I who wanted to sigh just as much. After the whirlwind of my father's funeral settled, my husband approached me with a smirk on his face. "Finally done, huh? So how much did you inherit? Even if it's split between the two of you, it's gotta be a tidy sum, right?" As warned by my relative before our marriage, it seemed my husband's mind was preoccupied with thoughts of my father's inheritance. Disheartened by his attitude, I replied casually, "My sister gets $100 million and I get nothing." I hadn't even spoken to my lawyer yet, and with the funeral just behind me, I hadn't sorted out my own emotions. Seeing my husband so eagerly discussing the inheritance made me feel like laughing out loud in disbelief. Without missing a beat, my husband erupted. "What? You can't inherit any of his assets? In that case, I have no reason to stay with you. Let's get a divorce right away." Feeling similarly, I shot back, "Fine, let's do it. You married me for my father's inheritance in the first place, didn't you? I'll divorce you." As I said this, I handed him the divorce papers I had already prepared. He seemed a bit taken aback as I brought them out, almost as if he expected it, but he signed them nonetheless. Just before leaving, he uttered these words as my now ex-husband. "I'll divorce you since you have no inheritance and marry your sister Emily to get the $100 million. Despite that, I promptly filed the divorce papers, severing ties with my deceitful husband. The next day, it seemed he had already submitted a marriage certificate with my sister. A few days later, I received a call from him. Still believing his delusion, he shouted, "When are we starting the inheritance process? Get Emily her $100 million as soon as possible." I had been expecting his call. I didn't want to be the one reaching out to him, as he had left our home on his own. I responded in a composed, business-like tone. "Let's discuss it at my place this Sunday. I'll be prepared for the proceedings." My ex-husband, believing he was about to cash in on an inheritance, hung up the phone with joy. Little did he know, I eagerly anticipated his reaction when he learned the truth. When the weekend arrived, both he and my sister came to my parents' house, surprised to find a lawyer waiting there. Nevertheless, my ex-husband seemed confident. "Of course you need a lawyer when there's an inheritance involved," he remarked. Then, with a puzzled expression, the lawyer addressed my ex-husband. "Before we discuss the inheritance, there's the matter of property division that your ex-wife has brought against you." The lawyer proceeded to show my ex-husband a series of photos, images capturing him leaving my sister's house on specific dates clearly marked. Addressing him firmly, the lawyer continued, "These photos serve as evidence of your affair prior to the finalization of the divorce. You will need to comply with the terms of the property division settlement." I had overheard my ex-husband discussing the inheritance on the phone with my sister, prompting me to instruct my lawyer to investigate his infidelity. Perhaps thinking I was preoccupied with my father's funeral, my ex-husband and sister had been meeting almost daily at her house, providing ample evidence for my case. Both were taken aback when the conversation shifted from inheritance to their affair. But my ex-husband quickly composed himself and countered, "Property division is nothing compared to the $100 million inheritance. I'll settle it immediately." As the lawyer presented the documents, my ex-husband, still speaking with arrogance, signed them without hesitation. Once confirmed, I calmly informed him, "Enjoy your life with my sister, who gets nothing from inheritance. Since you've signed, I'll ensure the property division is enforced." Upon hearing she inherited nothing, my sister exclaimed, "What? Why do I get nothing? I'm supposed to receive $100 million. My ex-husband also turned red and shouted, "There's no way, there's no inheritance. I won't let you take it all." The lawyer intervened calmly, addressing their anger. "Emily is actually the biological child of Chloe's late mother from a previous relationship and was never formally adopted by Chloe's late father. Therefore, Emily, you cannot inherit your father's estate." I also explained to my bewildered sister, "When our parents remarried, Emily, you were about 1 year old. You probably don't remember, but I recall it vividly. I was 6 years old at the time and was thrilled to suddenly have a sister. Never did I imagine that this same sister would end up taking my husband. Our parents, both burdened with young children from previous marriages, aimed to strike a balance between us when they remarried and began parenting together. My mother loved me as her own daughter, and my father cherished you, Emily. Perhaps he spoiled you more because you weren't his biological child, being overly cautious. Despite both of them remarrying with children, my mother, suspected by some relatives of being interested in my father's assets, chose not to officially adopt you. Those relatives who consistently recommended suitors for me did so knowing I was the sole heir to our father's wealth. If our parents had had a child together, things might have been even more complex. But fortunately or unfortunately, they didn't. Perhaps they avoided having more children to prevent future inheritance disputes. Now understanding that my father had been financially supporting my sister even into her adulthood because he couldn't leave her his inheritance, I realized the extent of their relationship. Like my sister, I also hadn't been formally adopted by my mother, but it never affected how we saw each other. It seemed our parents hadn't disclosed their remarriage to my sister, and today was the first time she learned the truth. As for my ex-husband, his face turned from red to pale as the situation sunk in. Not only was he not inheriting what he expected from my sister, but he was also facing a property division claim he had already signed off on. With a pale face, he asked me, was it a lie that my sister was getting $100 million and I was getting nothing? Suppressing a laugh, I replied, "Of course, it was a lie. It was my way of getting back at you for cheating on me. Besides, my father's estate was nowhere near $100 million, even though he was wealthy." Suddenly, my usually quiet sister erupted, "I've been shopping so much, thinking I'd inherit Dad's money. What about the support Dad was giving me until now? Will you take care of that, sis? You're married with a dependable husband now, so you don't need it anymore, right? Make George support you." She glanced at my pale ex-husband, but he shook his head. "I can't do that. I also spent a lot, counting on the inheritance, and now with the property division, I'm stretched thin." With that, my ex-husband unexpectedly dropped to his knees before me, begging, "Chloe, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. Please, can we reconcile?" The lawyer, who had been packing up to leave, chuckled at the sight. Where had the arrogance he showed upon arrival gone? George, pleading on his knees like that, seemed utterly absurd. After our discussion, my ex-husband and sister left, and they divorced soon after. It seemed my ex-husband lost interest in my sister once he realized she wouldn't inherit anything. He mentioned property division, but since he had no assets, I arranged for him to pay from his monthly salary as advised by my lawyer, ensuring I received what was due. My sister, who lost our father's financial support, struggled to make ends meet with part-time work, but eventually faced overwhelming debts and declared bankruptcy. She moved out of her apartment, and I lost track of her whereabouts. My father's excessive support had made my sister dependent, hindering her ability to work seriously. Subsequently, my relatives began suggesting potential marriage partners for me as I lived alone in my parents' house. But I declined. I wanted to find a partner on my own terms, determined not to repeat the mistake of marrying someone like my ex-husband again.
Didn't I mention I was going golfing with my boss today? Geez, don't bother me for things like that, I exclaimed frantically when I called my husband. The response I received was cold and distant. Just moments before, I had received news of our daughter's involvement in a car accident. She was reportedly taken to the hospital, and despite the urgency of the situation, my husband, who was out golfing, showed no signs of concern. "What are you talking about? She's your daughter too," I exclaimed, but his demeanor remained unchanged. "I don't care. Golfing with my boss is more important than she is," he replied. My name is Catherine, a 42-year-old homemaker living with my husband, Bob, and our daughter. Bob, 3 years my senior, works for a major company downtown. We met at a party thrown by a mutual friend, and his dedication to his job as a business person attracted me. When Bob asked me out, I was over the moon, and his proposal day felt like floating on cloud 9. After getting married, I quit my job to focus on household chores, enjoying our newly life. A year later, we were blessed with a daughter named Emily. Raising her wasn't easy, but my mother-in-law, who had lost her husband and lived alone, was always there to help, a blessing indeed. Emily is now in her sophomore year of high school, studying hard, active in school activities, and enjoying her teenage life with friends. However, a noticeable change occurred in our harmonious family life about 6 months ago. It started after a long weekend when Bob planned a trip with his colleagues. Emily and I spent the holiday just the two of us. On the last day of the holidays, Bob returned and we had dinner together as a family for the first time in a few days. During dinner, Emily nervously approached the topic of her plans after high school. She had consulted with me while Bob was away and had already decided to go to college, which I supported. However, contrary to expectations, Bob grimaced and replied dismissively, "Why should I care? Do whatever you want." Taken aback by his cold response, I unintentionally let out a gasp. Bob immediately left the table without clearing his plate, stomping off to his room as if in a bad mood. Left behind, Emily and I were puzzled by Bob's unusually distant behavior. "I wonder what got into Dad. Did I say something wrong?" Emily asked. "He's probably just tired from the trip. We'll discuss your plans another time." I tried to console her. Although Emily seemed uneasy, she accepted my explanation. However, the following day, Bob's cold attitude persisted. From that point onward, he blatantly ignored Emily, refusing to engage in any conversation with her and consistently acting indifferent. Moreover, he started spending more time away on weekends, causing a significant decrease in the time we spent together as a family. Discussing Emily's future became an impossible task given the strained atmosphere. Feeling consistently ignored and without understanding why, Emily began to resent her father. Even my attempts to mediate proved futile, and their relationship worsened. Concerned about the situation, I consulted with my mother-in-law, who had a good relationship with Bob. She even tried to scold him, but it only made Bob angrier, leading him to snap and retort with a dismissive, "Mind your own business." To make matters worse, he blamed me for discussing the issue with my mother-in-law. On the night she came over after Emily locked herself in her room, Bob yelled at me, accusing, "Why did you talk to my mom?" "Don't meddle. It's because you've been cold to Emily, isn't it? Why are you ignoring her now? You used to dote on her so much." When I mustered the courage to ask why, Bob just glared at me with annoyance and didn't provide an answer. No matter how hard I tried to mediate between the two of them, Bob's attitude remained unchanged. Time went by without knowing the reason for his sudden change, but considering the shift in behavior after his return from the long weekend trip, it's reasonable to assume that something happened during that time. Perhaps someone filled his head with nonsense. Unable to figure it out on my own, I decided to talk to my mother-in-law and investigate the reason for Bob's change. Then, one Sunday, both Bob and Emily were out since the morning. As I carried on with my usual housework at home, I received a call on the landline just before noon. It was an unknown number, and with suspicion, I picked up. To my surprise, the caller claimed to be from the police. "Are you related to Emily?" the officer asked. "Yes, I'm her mother." "Oh my God, did something happen to her?" I inquired with a sinking feeling. The officer's response was unexpected. "Actually, the bus Emily was on got into a traffic accident," he explained, leaving me momentarily speechless. I felt a wave of dizziness, and my hands, holding the phone, started to shake. Emily had informed me she was going to the mall with friends, and apparently she was on the bus at the time of the accident. According to the officer, a car from the opposite lane crashed into the bus, and Emily and her friend were taken to a city hospital. After hearing the details of the accident and hanging up, I was in shock and couldn't move for a while. However, I knew I had to inform Bob quickly. I rushed to call him on my cell, and after more than 20 seconds of ringing, Bob answered, grumbling, "What is it?" Ignoring his tone, I frantically conveyed what had happened to Emily. "Bob, this is serious. I just got a call from the police. The bus Emily was on got into an accident, and she's apparently been taken to the hospital," I explained, tears streaming down my face. But ignoring my panic, Bob coldly responded, "So what? What do you want me to do about it?" Seeing no signs of him being disturbed and feeling as if he couldn't care less, I got even more frustrated. "What are you saying?" "Please head to the hospital now." "I'm going to." Before I could tell him the name of the hospital, Bob cut me off, saying, Didn't I tell you I have a golf outing with my boss today? I'm staying overnight and coming back tomorrow morning. Can't help it." True, he had mentioned a golf outing a few days ago, but I was shocked by Bob's lack of concern about our daughter's accident. "How can you even say that, Bob?" "Emily is your daughter," I pleaded. Bob replied, "I don't care. Golf with my boss is more important than her. You go to the hospital on your own," before hanging up abruptly. I tried calling back immediately, but it seemed he turned off his phone. I sent a text, but given his attitude, I doubted he would reply. Even though they had been distant, Emily is his flesh and blood. How could he be so heartless? This incident completely shattered my trust in Bob, and I was certain I couldn't continue living with him. I decided on divorce, but heading to the hospital was my top priority. So, I hurriedly left home. As he had declared, Bob didn't come home that day, staying at a hotel alone because the golf course was too far away. He even took the next day off work. When Bob came home the next morning, he was surprisingly cheerful. It was hard to believe for a father whose daughter had an accident the previous day. "Hey, what happened to Emily? Is she hospitalized?" Though Bob asked about Emily's condition, his casual tone made it clear he wasn't genuinely concerned. I sat in the living room, and when Bob noticed my downcast expression, he asked about Emily. Looking up at the sky, I replied, "She's there." For some reason, Bob seemed pleased, saying, "I see. Well, that's a relief. Once Emily's funeral is over, we can get divorced right away." With that, he pulled out a piece of paper, an invoice from a lawyer specializing in divorce procedures, and thrust it in front of me. It served as both a contract for lawyer consultation and already had his signature on it. Though Bob appeared quite prepared, having already decided to divorce him, it might have saved me some hassle. "All right, I got it." I quietly agreed to the divorce. Bob didn't discuss the reason for the divorce. He just walked away to his room without saying anything else, as if he was done with me. The Bob who once cherished Emily and valued our family was gone. It was a harsh realization, but I didn't feel sad, only an increasing resentment towards him. I then called my mother-in-law and informed her about Bob's return and the lawyer's contact. Within an hour, my mother-in-law arrived at our house, and Bob returned to the living room. As soon as my mother-in-law saw Bob, she approached him with tears in her eyes, questioning, "Bob, what were you doing when your family needed you the most? I never thought you'd be this cold-hearted." Even when scolded by his mother, Bob showed no remorse, stating, "I had prior commitments. What can I do?" And it was all her making a big fuss. Looking at me with a mocking attitude, he continued, "I've been dying to get divorced. With Emily gone, I feel so relieved. Now I can leave without any regrets." Unable to tolerate it any longer, I shouted, thrusting a few pictures at Bob. The pictures depicted a man and a woman intimately together. The moment he saw them, Bob's face turned pale. The man in the pictures was unmistakably Bob. Stammering, he asked, "Where did you get these pictures?" I calmly replied, "They were taken yesterday afternoon. Weren't you supposed to be at a business golf outing? Instead, you were with a young woman. What were you up to?" Confronted, Bob averted his eyes with a frustrated look and began making excuses like, "She's just a colleague from work. We just went golfing together." I sighed in disbelief, remarking, "Golfing in such fancy clothes? I don't think so." "I already know you're cheating, so save your breath." The word cheating made Bob's face stiffen. His inability to deny it immediately was telling. But this wasn't the first time I learned of Bob's affair. Recently, he often left the house without telling me where he was going. After discussing with my mother-in-law and obtaining financial help, I had hired a private investigator. The investigation revealed that whenever he went out, he met the woman in the photos, exposing his affair. His so-called business golf was a complete lie, and he probably stayed at a hotel with his lover. I had more evidence of his affair. I even have a video of you and that woman coming out of a hotel. "Don't think you can get out of it," I declared. When I said that, Bob looked pleadingly at his mother, but she already knew of his infidelity and firmly shook her head in disapproval. To cheat and not even visit Emily in the hospital, and then to selfishly rejoice, thinking she's dead. "I don't know how you'll face your father," my mother-in-law said with a mix of anger and sorrow. Bob froze in shock, his mouth agape. "Wait, Isn't Emily dead?" he stammered. I explained to a bewildered Bob, "Don't jinx it. You misunderstood. She's very much alive. The injuries from the accident were just minor scratches. Emily was taken to the hospital yesterday, but she was fine and had no major injuries. The accident wasn't severe, so she came home the same day." Bob misunderstood my comment, looking up to the sky. "She's there," and assumed Emily had passed away. "Emily is on her school trip as planned. She'll be landing soon," I continued. "A school trip?" Bob was taken aback, his eyes wide. Bob, who didn't care about his daughter, had completely forgotten about Emily's school trip. The trip started today and was for 3 nights and 4 days. Emily had gone shopping for it yesterday, and the doctor had said that there wouldn't be any issues with Emily going on the school trip, so she left as scheduled this morning. When I told Bob that Emily was up in the sky, probably boarding the plane, I used those words to indirectly blame him for not worrying about our daughter. "Oh, that's what happened. Well, I'm glad Emmeline is okay. I hope she enjoys her trip," Bob said nonchalantly. "How can you say that now? You knew how much she'd been looking forward to this trip since sophomore year. But I guess you'd be just as happy if she had an accident. You probably forgot all about it." I sternly rebuked Bob, who tried to feign laughter. I didn't have a shred of affection left for him. No matter what he says in the future, I'm never going to trust Bob again. Just then, an email notification popped up on Bob's smartphone. After reading the message, Bob's body began to tremble with anger. Shoving the screen in my face, he shouted, "Hey, what the hell is this?" I looked at the screen with my mother-in-law, and it was from Emily with a concise message. I can't consider someone who prioritizes his affair over his family as my father. I'm cutting ties with you. It was as if she was sending a message to a stranger. It seemed that Emily learned yesterday about Bob's lie about playing golf when he was actually meeting his mistress. She probably sent the email after landing. Being bluntly disowned by his 17-year-old daughter, Bob's face, which was pale just moments ago, turned a deep shade of red from shame and anger. He glared at me and began yelling, "This is all your fault. Weren't you the one who cheated first?" I was completely lost. "What are you talking about? When did I ever cheat?" I protested. "Jessica told me," Bob said. "Jessica? Who's that?" Then it hit me. The detective agency found out that Bob's mistress was named Jessica Accord. According to Bob, Jessica had filled his head with baseless lies about me when they first started their affair. She told him that I had cheated on him and that Emily was fathered by someone else. The detective agency confirmed that he began his affair 6 months ago, right when the relationship between Bob and Emily started to sour. Since Jessica works at the same company as Bob, they likely started their affair during the long weekend. Jessica had been spreading outrageous lies, saying I had cheated and had Bob raise Emily, a child fathered by another man. But Emily doesn't look or act anything like me. It's natural for me to have doubts. Both my mother-in-law and I were rendered speechless at Bob's outburst. Thinking Emily wasn't his because of Jessica's lie, he began to resent her and treated her coldly. But he didn't want to divorce because he didn't want to pay child support. However, mistaking Emily's accident for her death yesterday, he was relieved, thinking he could divorce without any complications. "You've got to be kidding me! So you believed a lie your mistress cooked up over your own family?" I shouted angrily. Bob responded with a dismissive laugh. "I don't care whether it's true or not. I'm going to divorce you and be with Jessica." Before I could retort, my mother-in-law stepped in with a stoic face. She sighed deeply as she locked eyes with Bob. I realized she was livid. "I wonder where I went wrong raising you. I'm so ashamed. Did you forget that Emily looked just like you when she was a baby? She's definitely your child," she said. "I told you, I don't care about that anymore," Bob retorted defiantly. Right then, someone knocked at the front door. I went to answer and brought the guest to the living room. Bob looked puzzled. The visitor was a man in a suit around our age. Bob rudely asked, "Who the hell are you? Are you her lover or something?" Unfazed, the man handed Bob his business card with a smile. Bob accepted the business card with disbelief. But the next moment, his eyes widened in surprise as he read, "Lawyer." Yes, he was the lawyer I had hired with the help of my mother-in-law. I had consulted him about Bob around the same time I had the detective agency investigate. I had asked him to come over yesterday, anticipating that Bob would do something rash given the situation with Emily. I suspected it had to do with Emily, and I had a feeling Bob might have done something unthinkable. I instructed Bob, "Call your mistress over right now." Bob started panicking and asked, "Why would Jessica be involved at this point?" The lawyer chimed in, "It's quite unreasonable to say she's not involved. Call her now." Bob had no comeback to that, realizing he had no way out. Reluctantly, he contacted his mistress. About 30 minutes later, a young woman arrived at the house. Jessica, in her 20s, probably took a personal day off from work just like Bob. She approached us with a disgruntled look, saying, "What's this all about? I've got nothing to do with your family issues." Despite Jessica's refusal, I informed her that I was divorcing Bob and that even if she stayed with him, he'd have to pay child support to Emily, who was about to go to college. "I have nothing to do with this," she insisted. However, the lawyer promptly responded, "We have plenty of evidence of the affair. Plus, you fed Bob some nasty lies which resulted in irreparable damage to Catherine and her family. That's defamation, and we could sue you for it." By the time the lawyer finished explaining, both Bob and Jessica had turned pale. Realizing they were out of options, not wanting a court battle, Bob agreed to pay child support properly. We went through a divorce, and later on, I heard that Bob's company found out he had been using his boss as a cover for his affairs. The whole company was appalled by the way he handled the situation, especially when they found out he pretended to be happy about his daughter's fake death. Exposing his true nature led him to resign from his position. Finding a new job proved difficult as word of Bob's misconduct spread within the industry. Although he managed to find part-time jobs, his pride got in the way, leading to constant issues with colleagues, and he quit frequently. The savings set aside for Emily's future had already been spent on his affair with Jessica. Soon after our divorce, the two broke up, and Jessica apparently quit her job too. But now that's none of my concern. Struggling, Bob turned to his mother for help but was denied. He even tried to cozy up to me and Emily, saying, "Please, I was wrong. Let's start over, the three of us." Of course, we rejected him, blocked his contacts, and moved to a new place with the help of his mother. Now his mother lives near us, and we continue to maintain a close relationship. I have no idea what became of Bob, and I never want to be involved with him again. Freed from the stress of the troubled relationship with his father, Emily has been thriving in high school. Now, as a senior, she got accepted into her first-choice college. "Congratulations, Emily. You did an amazing job," I said. "Thanks, Mom. It's all because you and Grandma supported me," Emily responded, tears streaming down her face. "Since the college is commutable from our home, we plan to live together as we always have." I managed to find a job shortly after becoming a single parent and now work full-time. We have enough savings to cover Emily's tuition. I'm hoping for a bright future as we move forward, living happily with our family.
"I'll let my parents live in this house. You can't even cook, so leave lol," Mark said to me with a grin, like he was proud of himself. I was so shocked I couldn't even respond. There is no way I would let my parents live in my house and then try to move in with my in-laws without my permission and try to kick me, the owner of the house, out. I've been bothered by Mark's bossy attitude for a while, but now it's really upsetting. I can't keep living with Mark if he keeps acting like this. I've decided that Mark needs to face consequences. My name is Sarah, and I'm a housewife in my 40s. I live with my husband, Mark. Mark is a house husband. He doesn't work but takes care of the housework because I have a job. I work to earn the money we need. All of this is to have a stable life with Mark, but it feels like my efforts are pointless. Mark has a very controlling personality. It's not that I think there's anything wrong with being a stay-at-home husband or that men should always work, but even though he's not working, he acts like he's the one in charge and is protecting the house. Out of the blue, Mark would say something like, "I'm so tired today, I want some ice cream, go buy it for me," while lounging in the living room at 11 p.m. The convenience store isn't far, but after a hard day at work, I was exhausted and annoyed by his demanding attitude. "Why don't you go get it yourself? It's just a short walk to the store," I replied, sounding harsher than I intended. That's how much Mark's behavior irritated me. When I refused, Mark chuckled and said, "You think that's how you should behave? You never know what will happen if you upset your husband. He always acts like he's the man of the house and deserves respect because of it." Honestly, I'm fed up with Mark acting superior and expecting respect just because he's the husband. Every time he behaves this way, I feel more and more frustrated and unwilling to deal with him. At that moment, I realized that if I kept dealing with Mark on top of my already stressful job, my stress would become unbearable. So I said, "I'm really tired. I'm sorry, I'm going to rest in my room." But Mark didn't like my response and stopped me, saying, "Wait, what's with that attitude towards your husband? I could kick you out right now if I wanted to. Do you think it's alright to upset your spouse like that?" He looked angry. Who does he think he's kidding, acting like the boss when he doesn't even work? He can upset me whenever he wants, but heaven forbid I upset him. It's just like a child's tantrum. "I'm sorry, but I'm really exhausted. Please understand," I said with a forced smile, not wanting to talk anymore. Mark sighed deeply and muttered, "You're such a disappointment as a wife." At this point, I didn't have the energy to argue, so I just said, "I'm sorry," again and went to my room. Day by day, I was worn down by Mark's overbearing behavior, but I didn't have the energy to confront him about it. That's how exhausted I was. Then one day, I caught a bad cold. The doctor said it was a stress-induced fever, and the first thing that came to my mind was Mark. I was so sick that I couldn't move, so I took a day off from work and could only lie down in bed. When I told Mark about my condition, he snapped, "A cold? That's just an excuse. Go to work, you're useless." His words seemed to make my fever spike even higher. He added, "I won't be taking care of you. "This is your mess, deal with it." So I was left alone in my room, moaning from the fever. There were no ice packs or anything to help. I was too weak to prepare anything for myself, and I didn't want to face Mark again for fear of more verbal abuse. My temperature reached 103 degrees Fahrenheit. The fever was so high that my body was drenched in sweat. I couldn't even get up to change my clothes, even when they were soaked. I thought, how much easier would it be if I could just pass away with these thoughts? I endured a painful night alone. Maybe it was the fever, but I couldn't sleep at all. Even when the sun set and it was time to see the night sky, feelings of loneliness and doubt overwhelmed me, and it was unbearable. I really wanted Mark to help, not necessarily to bring down my fever, but just to get me an ice pack, bring a cold compress, and say, "Are you okay?" But that was just a fantasy. The words I actually received tore at my heart, leading to new anxieties that tormented me. Why must I be the only one to feel this way? What did I do wrong? Why can't things go well with Mark? Once these thoughts started, I couldn't stop the tears. It was just so painful. After about 3 days of rest, my fever finally subsided and I was able to return to work. My colleagues and bosses were concerned, asking, "Are you sure you're all right?" But my health was improving, and more than anything, I had to support the household. When I mentioned that I couldn't afford to take more time off, they seemed even more worried. Their kindness, which was so much more than the attitude I received from Mark, brought tears to my eyes. I guess my emotional breaking point was close. A voice inside me was screaming that I couldn't deal with Mark any longer. I was ignoring that, pushing myself too hard. This way of life wouldn't last forever. Someday I'd reach my limit and wouldn't be able to get back up. Deep down I knew that, but I didn't have the presence of mind to deal with the situation before reaching my limit. By this time my affection for Mark had already faded, but I didn't have the energy to start planning to live separately. How could I clear these feelings? With these worries I worked hard every day, came home exhausted, and dealt with Mark's whims. This was my daily life. One day while I was relaxing in my room, Mark called out, "I have something important to discuss. Come here." It had been a long time since we had a serious talk. Usually Mark wouldn't inform me about various things and would make significant decisions on his own. So with a sinking feeling, I wondered what this was about. As I sat down for the discussion, Mark, with an excitement I'd never seen before, said, "I'll let my parents live in this house. You can't even cook, so leave." Oh. The first word that slipped out was, "What?" "You need to leave because you're living with my in-laws," he continued. I couldn't accept the reality of Mark's utterly selfish remarks, but he continued pushing forward with the conversation. He wanted to change the ownership of the house so it belonged to him and his parents. He planned to divorce me and start a new family, stating that his decision was final, and my opinions wouldn't change it. I felt overwhelmed by decisions made without any regard for my feelings. My parents were thrilled when I suggested they move in with us. They've missed me, and I need to take care of them as the head of the household. Mark, full of himself with his man-of-the-house mentality, only thought about his own needs. I knew I couldn't go on with Mark any longer. My heart told me it was impossible. Ignoring my feelings, Mark chuckled, "You love me so much, don't you? I know this is shocking coming from a husband you love so dearly, but I'm sorry. I just want to take care of my family. Please understand," Mark said in a tone that felt like a rebuke. But I wanted to respond, "That's not true at all." I had no affection left for Mark. What remained was disbelief at his selfish actions and regret for not ending things sooner. Why hadn't I left him earlier? If I had, Mark wouldn't have taken advantage of me so much or been so selfish and arrogant. I even despised my past self for being too weak to let him go. Seeing my distress, Mark seemed to misunderstand, thinking I still loved him and didn't want a divorce. But that couldn't be further from the truth. My feelings for Mark had faded long ago. All that was left was disgust for a man who thought I still cared despite everything. To make myself clear, I spoke up, "Fine then, I'll leave." At those words, Mark exclaimed, "What?" Clearly he hadn't expected me to agree to a divorce and leave so readily. He needed to realize that the old me, who used to bail him out, was gone for good. From now on, whatever happens to Mark, I won't be there to help him because we won't be a couple anymore. Seeing my determination, Mark looked shocked and frozen in place. I seized the moment to head to my room and pack the essentials. I couldn't take larger items today, so I'd have to arrange for movers later. As I prepared to leave, Mark hurried over and asked, "Are you sure about this? If we divorce, we'll be strangers." I smiled and replied, "I've already fallen out of love with you. Letting go feels like a weight lifted off my shoulders." Hearing this, Mark stood there looking lost. I nodded, said, "Thanks for everything," and walked out of the house. Mark had a worried look on his face. After I returned to my parents' place and explained everything, they were furious with Mark's behavior at first, but calmed down once they knew I had a plan. I started recovering at my parents' home while sorting out various matters, starting with the divorce. After sending the divorce papers, I received a message from Mark. Are you sure about this? I don't know if it's really a good thing, but I don't have any feelings for you anymore. If we've gone this far and he says there's no divorce, that would be a problem. I feel so much better now that you're gone, so fill out the divorce papers quickly. When I replied, there was no response. A few days later, I received completed divorce papers from Mark, with his sections already filled out. I promptly completed my parts and submitted them to the county office on the same day. Now Mark and I are officially divorced. I no longer have to support the household as Mark's wife. During the divorce, we divided our assets. Mark got the house as he had originally insisted on it, so I transferred ownership to him and decided to move on. The house was never really comfortable for me anyway, it had been more of a burden. Instead, I decided to seek alimony from Mark. His parents covered it since he wasn't working, but now he's actively job hunting, likely planning to repay them once he finds a decent job. However, reality doesn't always follow plans. A month passed after the divorce was finalized, and I moved out of my parents' home into a new place, enjoying a peaceful life. Then I received a call from Mark. Honestly, I found it annoying. I immediately guessed why he was calling, but ignoring him might lead to more complications. So, knowing I'd have to talk to him sooner or later, I decided to address it now for the sake of my own future. Hello, what do you want after all this time? I was completely fed up with dealing with Mark. I wanted him to get to the point quickly. Reluctantly, I answered the phone, and he pleaded, "Please help me." His desperate tone made me chuckle. I knew Mark was in a tough spot, but I hadn't expected it to be this bad. Well, what's going on? You need to tell me the whole story, I replied, half amused. I had a feeling about why Mark was in trouble, but I wanted him to explain it himself. When I pressed him, Mark started explaining hesitantly, stumbling over his words. He had taken over the house after our divorce and managed fine for a month. But now he had a rent payment due. Being unemployed, he couldn't cover it himself, so he asked my former parents-in-law, who were on a pension, to help out. However, the bill was much higher than they expected, around $1,800. There was no way they could afford that on their fixed income. My former in-laws were furious, insisting, "This isn't what we agreed to." They laid the blame squarely on Mark. Lost and uncertain, Mark called me in tears, asking for help. I didn't realize the rent would be so high. The place is a mess now. What are you going to do about it? Frustrated, Mark was now blaming me. It was true I hadn't mentioned the rent specifics earlier, but it was Mark's own folly to take over the house without knowing its monthly costs. He had treated me like an outsider and pushed me away, and now he was facing the consequences of his actions. Despite this, he couldn't accept responsibility and instead reached out to me for help. I couldn't help but sigh at his audacity. Ignoring my feelings, Mark continued urgently, "Please, I need your help. We can't keep going like this. I need you." His desperation was clear in his voice. They must be feeling incredibly trapped right now. The rent due date had likely passed, meaning they might already be behind. The landlord of that house was known for their short temper and strict policy on rent payments. I remembered being warned repeatedly when I rented the house, never be late with the rent. If they missed a payment, they were in for serious trouble with the owner. Mark had met the landlord a couple of times and knew how intimidating they could be. He must have been desperate when he called me for help. "Please just cover the rent for 1 month. I don't have anyone else to turn to. You still care about me, right? If someone you care about is in trouble, you should help them out," Mark pleaded, his tone still self-centered. "My feelings for you have long since faded." I wanted to say those words, but I held back and replied coldly, "I'm sorry, but I don't have any obligation to help you. You were the one who cut me off. Now you expect me to assist you when it's convenient for you? That's not fair." Mark defended himself. "Please don't be so cold. I really can't handle this alone. Whether you still love me or not doesn't matter now. We were married once, right? Can't you help me out just this once?" "No, you were the one who left me. Even before that, my feelings for you had already cooled. It's been a long time since I stopped loving you." When I heard Mark's dejected voice on the other end of the phone saying, "I can't believe it," it struck a chord deep within me. For so long, I endured everything. Even when Mark was selfish, took me for granted or mistreated me when I was sick, I stayed by his side, hoping to salvage our marriage. I worked tirelessly for the life we had, but this was the outcome. Why hadn't I left sooner when my love for him faded? Why didn't I distance myself earlier? These regrets flooded in, mingling with the anger I felt towards him. Mark never truly faced me. He never showed real concern, never protected me, and never embraced the idea of navigating life together as a team. All this time, he treated me like a maid, a mere money-making machine. Each time he acted this way, he seemed oblivious to my suffering. Yet now, despite all this being a result of his actions, he came pleading for help as if he were the victim. His self-centered attitude was repelling. "Please help me. I'm begging you." What about getting married again? Let's start over properly this time. I promise I'll never push you away again, Mark proposed, desperately. I couldn't help but chuckle bitterly at Mark's desperate suggestion. Remarry you? Are you kidding me? All of this is the result of your own actions. I've been trying to work things out in my own way for a long, long time. I kept hoping you would face reality. And now you want me to start over with you, pretending none of that ever happened? Do you expect me to go back to those miserable days? That's never going to happen. I refuse to return to that life, no matter what. I became so emotional that tears started flowing. I couldn't tell if they were from anger or sadness. Mark remained silent in response to my words. Unable to continue the conversation any longer, I simply said, "Goodbye," and hung up. Mark didn't call back, and wanting to avoid hearing his voice ever again, I blocked his number. Later, I heard from mutual friends that Mark and his family were evicted from their home. Mark attempted to persuade my former in-laws to cover his rent, but they were furious, refusing his request and upsetting the landlord in the process. Left with no choice, they had to leave. Mark hasn't had much success finding a full-time job and is now working part-time to get by. Because they had to sell their house, my former in-laws are now squeezed into a rundown apartment, all three of them together. Meanwhile, I've been deeply focused on my work, and my boss has even discussed a promotion with me. There's a possibility I might become the first female manager in our company, and I've been receiving admiration from both colleagues and juniors. Sometimes friends inquire, "Aren't you thinking about getting married?" Honestly, after my past experiences, I have a rather negative view of marriage. The idea of dating or marrying again doesn't appeal to me right now. But life is long and there's no rush. Many people in this generation live their entire lives happily unmarried. What matters most to me is living a life without regrets and staying true to myself. With that in mind, I want to continue navigating life at my own pace.